Chapter 26:16. Naturally, Yi Shiwen did not know that he had become a legendary senior in the eyes of these juniors. He gently stroked the jade slip in his hand. It seemed as if a ferocious evil spirit was being nurtured inside this jade slip. However, he had discovered that there shouldn't be any living creature inside this jade slip. Instead, there should be other mysteries in it. In any case, there must be some secret hidden in it. Otherwise, the immortal level master of the blood refining sect would not have killed Yuya and the others for this jade slip. The Regent sect was the supreme overlord in the god Burial Star Ocean. A master of the Regent realm could easily destroy a first-class immortal inheritance. Although he was only a demigod disciple and was not that important, he would not have done this if it was not of great importance. Yi Shiwen kept probing the ghost slip with his divine sense. There seemed to be a big mouth in the ghost slip, swallowing his divine sense. He didn't care about it at all. He just kept probing it with his divine sense. Fortunately, Yi Shiwen's divine sense was huge. An ordinary person wouldn't be able to withstand such nourishment. Even an immortal level deity would suffer a great loss of vitality under such nourishment. However, his feeding finally worked. When he probed the ghost slip with his divine sense again, the ghost slip no longer swallowed his divine sense. Instead, a picture scroll appeared. It was like a map, marking a place on the map. The starting point marked on the map was in the ghost realm of the heaven-earth. At this moment, Yi Shiwen seemed to understand why the blood-refining sect was searching for this ghost slip. Perhaps it had something to do with this map. In particular, the starting point was in the ghost realm of the heaven-earth. It just so happened that Yi Shiwen was also going to the ghost realm of the heaven-earth. When he finished deciphering the map, he was already outside the ghost realm of the heaven-earth. In the distance, there was a huge mountain in the sky of the ghost realm of the heaven-earth, as if it was suppressing something. On top of this mountain stood a small city. It should be said that it was basically a marketplace, because this city was built by people who entered and exited the ghost realm of gloomy heaven, and it was used to exchange and auction their gains. Before coming here, Yi Shiwen had done some research and learned that the ghost realm of the heaven-earth was one of the fragments formed after the Phantom Domain was broken. It was one of the most intense battlefields of the War of Resistance. God knew how many tyrannical gods and powerful beings had fallen in the ghost realm of the heaven-earth. After these top beings died, they would definitely not be willing to die tragically. Their resentment in such an environment would turn into extremely terrifying ghosts after a long time. It was said that there was even an extremely fierce ghost king in the ghost realm of the heaven-earth. However, all of this was just a legend. No one knew the specifics because everyone who had encountered it had turned into ashes. So, all of this was just a legend. Even if there was no ghost king, there were countless terrifying ghosts in the ghost realm of the heaven-earth. It was already a well-known fact. Later on, because there were many cultivation techniques, elixirs, divine tools, and so on left by senior experts in this battlefield, it attracted countless experts from all over the world. Many of these experts also fell here and turned into new ghosts. Therefore, in this ghost realm of the heaven-earth, although powerful ghosts were constantly being destroyed, more and more ghosts were being replaced. Therefore, not only did this ghost realm not shrink, but it also continued to grow with each passing day. Later on, it was said that a ghost emperor was almost born in the ghost realm of the heaven-earth. At the critical moment, it alarmed a powerful existence of the Emperor-Lord level and personally came to kill the Ghost Emperor. That battle was earth-shattering, and almost the entire ghost realm of the heaven-earth was destroyed. After that Emperor-Lord level master directly turned his hand into a seal and turned it into a huge seal ribbon, which suppressed the ghosts in the entire ghost realm of the heaven-earth. Over the past countless years, the ghost realm of Gloom Heaven had never expanded again. Many powerful ghosts had also suffered great losses in that battle and could no longer cause any trouble. Gradually, it had become a secret realm that many people came and went from. Yi Shiwen knew that this huge mountain should be the seal ribbon that the Emperor-Lord level master had turned his hand into. Looking from afar, there was only a kind of majestic feeling. Under the erosion of time, It didn't seem to have the slightest spirit. However, Yishuan didn't dare to look down on it. He could also turn his hand into a seal, but to be like that Emperor Lord level master and suppress the ghost realm of the heaven-earth for countless years without moving was something that he couldn't do. Even if he tried his best, he couldn't achieve such a level, let alone a magical power of turning his hand. Unless he had reached a shocking understanding of the magical power of sealing, or his strength had reached a certain level, such as the Emperor Lord level. Yi Shiwen's figure jumped and directly flew into the marketplace. In the marketplace, many people came and went in a hurry. There were also many people on the ground laying out the things they wanted to exchange, but these were just some relatively ordinary divine objects. Many of them were found in the ghost realm of the heaven-earth. No matter what the original attribute was, after so many years of immersion in the ghost realm, they were full of ghost energy. They couldn't be used directly, and definitely needed to eliminate the ghost energy before they could be used. Although the martial sex information said that the illusory sky godsand had been seen in the depths of the ghost realm, it would naturally be best if he could exchange it outside without going in. However, what made him feel quite regretful was that he didn't find the illusory sky godsand he wanted after scanning up and down with his divine sense. Instead, he found some other good things. Yi Shiwen didn't miss this opportunity. After going forward to exchange a few things, he entered the largest building in the marketplace, the Heavenly Treasure Pavilion. He had already asked around. The Heavenly Treasure Pavilion was currently the largest force in the marketplace, and it was also a force that was stationed here all year round. Many people would not choose to set up stalls outside, but directly sell to the Heavenly Treasure Pavilion, which could save them a lot of time and energy. If they wanted to find something, it was best to find it in the Heavenly Treasure Pavilion. As soon as Yi Shiwen entered, he released a tyrannical aura that belonged to the Sage Realm. Immediately, the Heavenly Treasure Pavilion attendant guarding the door didn't dare to underestimate him. He quickly raised his spirits and welcomed Yi Shiwen in. "May I know what Senior is looking for this time?" A attendant asked carefully. He was only in the profound realm, which was not bad in the outside world, but it was nothing here. Not to mention that the person in front of him was an expert that he absolutely couldn't afford to offend. "I heard that the Heavenly Treasure Pavilion is the largest force in the vicinity. I want to ask you, does the Heavenly Treasure Pavilion have illusionary divine sand?" Yi Shiwen didn't hide anything and asked directly on the spot. "Senior, we generally have other natural treasures here, but this illusionary divine sand is extremely rare even in the ghost realm of gloomy heaven." The attendant said awkwardly. "Don't talk nonsense. Just tell me, do you have it here or not?" Yi Shiwen asked. "Senior, we don't have illusionary divine sand here, but it just so happens that another senior came to the Heavenly Treasure Pavilion to exchange things. One of the things he wanted was illusionary divine sand, but..." The attendant said hesitantly. "But what? Is there something you can't say?" Yi Shiwen frowned slightly and said directly. "It's just that the senior didn't want to exchange things, but had another condition." The attendant said. "What condition?" Yi Shiwen asked. Suddenly, a series of footsteps was heard. An old man in a red robe strode in and shouted, "Who wants to exchange for my illusionary divine sand?" "You are the person who owns the illusionary divine sand?" Yi Shiwen asked as he looked at the old man from head to toe. He immediately felt that the old man was unfathomable. "That's right, the illusionary divine sand is mine." The old man in a red robe nodded and said without denying it. Yi Shiwen then said, "Since you are the owner of the illusionary divine sand, then I will be straightforward. I want your illusionary divine sand. May I know the conditions? What do you want to exchange for it?" "What do I want to exchange for? Haha, I can tell you that I won't exchange for it. I have another condition. If you can satisfy it, I will offer my illusionary divine sand with both hands." The old man in a red robe said on the spot. "What condition? Let me hear it." Yi Shiwen said calmly as he calculated the pros and cons in his heart. "First, you have to know my condition. It's very simple. First, let me see how good you are." The old man in a red robe said as he made his move. The entire world disappeared in an instant and turned into a world of flames. As soon as he made his move, strange flames fell from the sky and spread towards Yi Shiwen. This world of flames engulfed all the other worlds in an instant. Yi Shiwen immediately realized that the old man in a red robe had released a divine kingdom. However, this divine kingdom had been released without anyone noticing. His skill was extremely profound. Yi Shiwen's expression didn't change. Then he casually pointed his finger. An endless sword aura splashed out from his finger, tearing the entire sky apart. This world of flames was also instantly torn into pieces by him. Yi Shiwen didn't make any further moves after breaking the divine kingdom. He just looked at the old man in a red robe coldly. Although the old man in a red robe had extraordinary strength, he wouldn't let it go if he didn't give him a reasonable explanation. Ha 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 ha. Good strength. The old man in a red robe laughed and said. Chapter 26:17. Yi Shiwen did not say anything. He just looked at the old man coldly. He wanted a reasonable explanation. Don't be angry, my friend. I have my reasons for doing this. The old man in the red robe laughed. He looked at Yi Shiwen and said, It's like this. This time, I've invited a few powerful friends to explore the gloomy sky ghost palace. I wonder if you're interested? Dark sky ghost palace? Yi Shiwen frowned. Don't you know about the gloomy sky ghost palace? It seems that you are from the outside. The old man in the red robe said. Let me introduce myself first. People call me the Red Robe Old Monster. I am stationed in the gloomy sky ghost palace all year round. Oh, it's Brother Red Robe. I am the deadly scholar. Yi Shiwen said. The old man in the red robe was confused. As far as he knew, there was no one called the deadly scholar among the experts who had cultivated to their level. It was highly likely that he was an old monster who had been cultivating for many years and had only just come out of seclusion. After all, although the divine mirage sand was precious, it was something that happened countless years ago. After the mirage plane was destroyed, the divine mirage sand became a very scarce resource. Divine objects or divine weapons that originally required the illusory divine sand had also been eliminated by the passage of time. Although the illusory divine sand was still precious, it was far less valuable than it had been in the past. This was because there were very few people who needed the illusory divine sand to practice anything. It was only possible if they got their hands on an ancient cultivator's recipe. He did not have such a recipe. Although he had the illusory divine sand, he did not pay too much attention to it. However, it was also possible that the so-called deadly scholar was just a pseudonym. Just like the Red Robe Old Monster, it was just a nickname and not his real name. However, there was no other way. This kind of exploration must be carried out by people he was familiar with. It was not easy to find people at their level. Brother Deadly Bookworm, it seems like you don't come here often, so you don't know much about this place. The Gloomy Sky Ghost Palace is actually located in the deepest part of the Gloomy Sky Ghost Realm. It is said that there was once a ferocious ghost whose cultivation was close to that of a ghost emperor. He unified the Gloomy Sky Ghost Realm and spent 1,000 years cultivating the Gloomy Sky Ghost Palace. The Gloomy Sky Ghost Palace is also known as the 10,000 Ghost Palace, where countless terrifying ghosts gather. Later, it was destroyed by an imperial emperor and sealed. However, in recent years, a part of the seal on the Gloomy Sky Ghost Palace has been gradually corroded. Every 10,000 years, the Gloomy Sky Ghost Palace will come into the world again. Do you mean that you want me to enter the Gloomy Sky Ghost Palace with you? Yi Shiwen asked. That's right, fellow Taoist is a straightforward person. That's exactly what we mean. Fellow Taoist, don't you want to find the illusory sky divine sand? I obtained the illusory sky divine sand from the Gloomy Sky Ghost Palace. The red-robed old man said, I have some on hand, but not much. I think you will need more than this if you want to refine a divine tool. The red-robed eccentric flipped his hands, and in an instant, a burst of light erupted from his hands. Countless colorful grains of divine sand flowed in his hands. Thousands of tiny grains of divine sand twined around his hands like a colorful river, flowing continuously. However, when these divine sand condensed, Yi Shiwen found that they were only the size of a fist. As the red robe old monster said, There was not much. Yishuan thought about it for a while. Relying on such a small amount of illusory, heavenly god sand isn't enough if I want to refine the border-crossing talisman. It seems that I must go to this muddy sky ghost palace. It's better this way. It's better to have a companion than to wander around in confusion. Of course, he had absolute confidence in his cultivation. Even if the red-robe old monster wanted to plot against him, he could escape unscathed. Moreover, the starting point mentioned in the ghost slip he had just obtained was in the gloomy sky ghost palace. Well, if that's the case, then let's go together. Yishuan nodded. Fellow is straightforward. Then I will give these divine sand to you first. The red-robe old monster was also very straightforward. He directly turned the divine sand into a ray of light and shot it towards Yishuan. Yishuan directly grabbed it into the Tianyuan mirror and said, "Aren't you afraid that I will take it and leave? What's there to be afraid of? As the saying goes, don't doubt the people you use. I believe that with your cultivation, you won't do anything irrational for such a small amount of illusory sky divine sand. Even if you do, it's no big deal. You'll just lose some illusory sky divine sand." The red-robed old monster said indifferently. Fellow is straightforward. Then, when will we set off? Yishuan asked. Now is the time in the gloomy sky ghost realm. The Yin wind is blowing fiercely. It is not suitable to go in. We will set off in 3 days. I will inform you at that time, the red-robe old monster said. That's good. Just inform me at that time. Yishuan nodded. Now that he knew the whereabouts of the divine sand, Yishuan was not in a hurry. In the next 3 days, he directly left the market square and found a hidden place to study this ghost slip. There were many things in this ghost slip that he hadn't understood before. However, he had gained a more detailed understanding of these things in the past 3 days. This was a small map. It was like a small secret territory. The starting point was in the gloomy sky ghost palace. Even so, the gloomy sky ghost palace was actually very big. There were many things contained in it. If he did not have this small map, it would not be so easy to enter that place by accident. However, he did not know what was in the gloomy sky ghost palace that was worth making such a map. However, he could vaguely see from the ghost slip that it was definitely not something simple. 3 days later, Yishuan finally received the message talisman from the red-robe old monster. Both sides directly met at a place thousands of miles away from the market square. This time, the red-robe old monster did not appear alone. Instead, he appeared with 3 other people. Among these 3 people, 2 of them were obviously a couple. The man looked middle-aged, and the woman looked like a beautiful woman. Yishuan took a closer look. It turned out to be 2 flood dragons. This was a bit strange. It was not that the dragon race could not cultivate to such a high realm. Generally, when a dragon reached such a high realm, the bloodline in their body would have long been purified and directly transformed into a real dragon. And these 2 flood dragons, one was water and one was fire. They completely retained the bloodline of the flood dragons. However, they did not transform into real dragons. Yishuan did not know why. In addition to the water and fire flood dragons, there was also a red gold ant that was taller than a person. It looked extremely powerful. It turned out to be an extremely rare metal-eating ant. This race was also an extremely rare race in the universe, but their bloodline was very strong. There were not many of them, but every one of them was considered a master. These people were all at the pinnacle of the sage plane. However, it seemed that they were still far away from the titled king plane. Fellow Taoist life-stealing scholar is here. That's great. Now that everyone is here, let me introduce them to everyone. This is fellow Taoist life-stealing scholar. He specializes in the law of lightning. The red-robed old monster introduced. The 3 of them looked at Yishuan and sized him up. Yishuan had restrained his aura, so they could not see his strength. However, they could still feel a shocking pressure coming from him. He was indeed a rare master. This was also because Yishuan did not want to be too ostentatious. After all, it was not impossible for him to defeat someone at the pinnacle of the sage plane with the strength of a sage plane intermediate stage. However, it would cause too many people to worry about him. Now that he had concealed his level, they would only think that he was an ordinary sage playing pinnacle stage. Sir Deadly Bookworm. Let me introduce you. These three are Sir Deadly Bookworm, Sir Deadly Bookworm, and Sir Deadly Bookworm. The red-robe old monster introduced them one by one. Yi Shiwen looked over and saw that the man was actually a water dragon, and not an ordinary one at that. It seemed that he had cultivated in the laws of ice, and was a variant of the water dragons. As for his partner, the Fire Flood Dragon, he was not to be trifled with. The fiery aura that emanated from his body even made Yi Shiwen feel somewhat fearful. As for the metal-eating ant, it seemed to have the laws of power fluctuating around it. It did not look big, but it should have been very strong. Since everyone is here, then Sir Deadly Bookworm, I think you should tell me what the real purpose of your trip is, right? Yi Shiwen asked. Did the red-robe old monster not tell you? The metal-eating ant looked at Yi Shiwen strangely. I was careless. The red-robe old monster laughed and said, in that case, I will say it again. In fact, all of you can say that you have already cultivated to the peak of your current cultivation. Take me, for example. I have been stuck in this realm for more than 1,000,000 years. However, I have not made any progress at all. If we rely on ourselves to make another breakthrough and kill our way into the king-ranked realm, it is no different from wishful thinking. Therefore, we must have sufficient fortuitous encounters. Yi Shiwen faintly understood why these top-notch experts had gathered here. He was afraid that there must be a reason for them to do so. Is there anything in the gloomy sky ghost palace that can help us break through to the king-ranked realm? Yi Shiwen asked without batting an eyelid. Deep down, he was extremely tempted. One had to know that even at his current level, he wouldn't dare to say that he would definitely be able to cross the threshold of the king-ranked realm. That would require endless accumulation and sufficient opportunities. Right now, an opportunity was right in front of him. Chapter 26:18. There were indeed many king-ranked experts in the world. However, most of them had attained the king-ranked realm hundreds of thousands, millions, or even tens of millions of years ago. The number of experts who had yet to attain the king-ranked realm could be tens or even hundreds of times that number. This did not even include the sage realm experts who had already fallen. From this, one could see how difficult it was to attain the king-ranked realm. Even Yi Shiwen was not sure if he would be able to enter the king-ranked realm. After all, compared to others, his experience was still too shallow. Although he was still a long way from attaining the king-ranked realm, he had a plan ahead. That's right. Fellow Taoist life-stealing scholar is right. I once obtained an ancient prescription written by Alchemy Emperor. Although it was badly damaged, after many years of repairing it, I finally managed to decipher the contents of this ancient prescription. The red-robed old monster continued. This ancient prescription was left behind by Alchemy Emperor. It recorded a type of elixir that can be used to break through to the king-ranked realm. It can greatly increase one's chances of attaining the king-ranked elixir. I named this elixir the king-ranked elixir. It means that it can directly grant one the title of king-ranked elixir. The red-robed old monster looked at Yi Shiwen. The other three obviously knew about this long ago. Only Yi Shiwen had joined later and was probably not very clear about it. Increasing one's chances of attaining the king-ranked realm. Even if it was only a 10% chance, it would still cause countless people to throw themselves at it crazily. Even if they knew that it was like a moth flying into a flame, it was no exception. This was a threshold that stopped too many people. However, once one managed to step into the king-ranked realm, one would undoubtedly become one of the small group of people who ruled over all the realms. In this era where there were no thearchs, one would be invincible. They might look impressive now, but they had to be careful. They were afraid that they would offend the king-ranked sects and invite the king-ranked experts to attack them. If they lived like this for 100 or 1,000 years, it would not be a big deal. However, if they had to live like this for 1,000,000 or 10,000,000 years, it would be extremely terrifying. Who would be able to accept that? What's more, there was a 50% chance of attaining the king-ranked realm. This, in addition to their own success rate, greatly increased their chances of success. Naturally, Yi Shiwen was also extremely tempted. He wouldn't believe it if it was a pill recipe spread by others. Everyone's cultivation could be said to be unique. It was said that there were 3,000 great Daos, and each one could prove the Tao. This was the truth. However, a pill emperor was different. Because in the legends, a pill emperor was an invincible figure with great talent in the Tao of alchemy. In the past, he had swallowed alchemy all the way until he reached the imperial monarch realm, and he shocked the world. Only then did he obtain the title of pill emperor. He was the only one throughout the ages. If he couldn't do it, then no one else could. Therefore, Yi Shiwen did not doubt it at all. Taoist Red Robe, do you have the king's sealing pill now? Yi Shiwen asked. I don't have any, but I've been collecting medicinal herbs for over 1,000,000 years. Now, I'm only missing the last one. When the time comes, I can start concocting pills. Fellow Taoists who come to help, each of you can get one. What do you think? The Red Robe old freak stared at Yi Shiwen. It seemed like if Yi Shiwen didn't agree, he would immediately kill Yi Shiwen to prevent the news from leaking out. Yi Shiwen finally understood why the Red Robe old freak didn't say anything at the start and only said it now. He was probably afraid that the news would leak out. Once the news of the king's sealing pill was leaked, it would probably cause a huge uproar in the entire God Burial Star Ocean. If it were him, he would definitely be careful. However, if he didn't agree, forget about the Red Robe old freak. Even the other 3 Taoists wouldn't let him off. Sure, Yi Shiwen immediately agreed. After all, he was very interested in the king's sealing pill. It could save him many years of hard cultivation. If he wanted to break through to the king realm in the future, this might be the key. All right, since that's the case, we have no objections. Our goal is very clear. We want the opportunity to break through to the king realm. On this matter, we all have the same goal. The Red Robe old freak said. Red Robe old freak, you still haven't said what you lack. Do you really need to enter the Muddy Sky Ghost Palace to look for it? The Water Flood Dragon said impatiently. It was obvious that he was getting impatient. In that case, I'll be honest with you. What I lack is a medicinal herb called the 10,000 Ghosts Heart-Devouring Grass. This kind of natural treasure only grows in places with extreme yin energy. Furthermore, it can't grow in ordinary places with extreme yin energy. It can only grow in places where countless ghosts roam. I've searched through all the ancient records for so many years and only found the 10,000 Ghosts Heart-Devouring Grass in the Muddy Sky Ghost Palace. The Red Robe old freak said calmly. To others, this 10,000 Ghosts Heart-Devouring Grass is a poison. Once eaten, it will be instantly devoured by countless ghosts. It is famous for its ferocity. However, to refine this king sealing pill, it is necessary to use this 10,000 Ghosts Heart-Devouring Grass. This is also the strength of an alchemy emperor. In the hands of an alchemy emperor, this poisonous grass actually has such an effect. Don't tell me you want us to go in and help you look for it? The Muddy Sky Ghost Palace is so huge. How long would it take for us to find it? The next time the Muddy Sky Ghost Palace opens will be 10,000 years later. The metal-eating ant was getting impatient. His feet kept stomping on the void, creating cracks in the void. Of course, that's impossible. Everyone, don't worry. In fact, I've already gone in the previous few times the Muddy Sky Ghost Palace opened. I've already found the location of the 10,000 Ghosts Heart-Devouring Grass. This time, we'll go and find the 10,000 Ghosts Heart-Devouring Grass. When the time comes, I may need everyone's help because there are many powerful ghosts around the 10,000 Ghosts Heart-Devouring Grass. I won't be able to get rid of them all by myself. The Red Robe old freak said, the 10,000 Ghosts Heart-Devouring Grass is a highly toxic thing for us. However, it's a great supplement for those ghosts. Therefore, many powerful ghosts will be entrenched in the vicinity of the 10,000 Ghosts Heart-Devouring Grass. They will wait for the 10,000 Ghosts Heart-Devouring Grass to ripen. I've already calculated that a batch of 10,000 Ghosts Heart-Devouring Grass is about to ripen. If we miss this opportunity, we'll have to wait for more than 70,000 years. At that time, we won't have such a good opportunity. Yi Shiwen suddenly understood. Some of the mysteries had finally been revealed. Originally, he had been a bit baffled. Since this Red Robe old freak had found such a heaven-defying thing like the king pill recipe, he wouldn't have so easily shared it with others if he had been in his place. It turned out that picking the 10,000 ghosts heart-devouring grass wasn't that simple. Moreover, since the red-robe old freak had gone in a few times, then the phantom sky ghost palace's illusory sky god sand was probably true. However, Yi Shiwen was most concerned about the whereabouts of the illusory sky god sand. He immediately sent a voice transmission to the red-robe old freak and asked, "I wonder if you can tell me the whereabouts of the illusory sky god sand." "No problem. The illusory sky god sand is in the muddy sky ghost palace. I passed by there before and obtained some illusory sky god sand. However, I want to remind you that there's an extremely powerful ghost dragon guarding there. According to my estimation, it's not far from breaking through to the king realm. Therefore, I didn't stay too long last time. I left before he completely woke up. This time, if you want to take the illusory sky god sand away, you'll have to alarm him. At that time, there will be another bitter battle." The red-robe old freak added a message. "So there's such a thing. Thank you for reminding me," Yi Shiwen said. "I also hope that there won't be one less person when the time comes." The red-robe old freak couldn't help but wave his hand. "I'll tell you the location of the illusory sky god sand. At that time, whether you succeed or fail, I hope that you can rush over to meet us. After all, no matter how important the illusory sky god sand is, it can't be compared to the king-conferred pill. I don't think I need to explain this to you." Yi Shiwen nodded. The illusory sky god sand was indeed very important. However, it was not worth mentioning when compared to the king-conferred pill. After all, this pill was related to whether or not he could become a king-conferred pill. Of course, Yi Shiwen had more on his mind. In addition to the illusory sky god sand, there was also the place marked in the ghost slip. He also wanted to take a look. It just so happened that there was still some time before the 1,000 ghosts heart-devouring grass matured. He still had enough time to deal with his own matters. In that case, let's set off. After all, this time, the gloomy sky ghost palace will open. There will be a lot of people going there. We don't want to fall behind others and get beaten to it. The metal-eating Anne was getting impatient from waiting. He quickly said, "What Taoist friend said is right. Since there are no more questions, let's set off." The red-robe old freak waved his hand, and everyone flew towards the ghost domain in the distance. This gloomy sky ghost domain deserved to be called an ominous place. Yi Shiwen had just entered the gloomy sky ghost domain when he felt an astonishing evil aura rushing towards him. If it weren't for his exquisite cultivation, an ordinary person would have been driven crazy by this evil aura. It was very terrifying. They hadn't entered for long when they encountered a group of evil ghosts. They were howling and pouncing towards them. In this place of extreme een, although the cultivation of these people was different and the cultivation methods they practiced were also very different, the blood and chi in their bodies were extremely powerful. In the eyes of these ghosts in the ghost domain, they were like guiding lights. They were like sharks that had smelled blood. They chased after them and surrounded them. Fortunately, everyone's strength was extremely strong. They killed their way to the gloomy sky ghost palace in less than half a day. Chapter 26:19. From afar, the entire gloomy sky ghost palace looked like a huge ghost head. It looked extremely eerie and terrifying. This ghost head opened its bloody mouth and welcomed everyone who came in. Through the introduction of the red-robed old monster, everyone learned that this gloomy sky ghost palace was a transmission array, and the real gloomy sky ghost palace was inside this ghost head. It was like a ferocious ghost with a green face and fangs had opened its bloody mouth to swallow the world. The closer they got to the gloomy sky ghost palace, the more terrifying the ghosts became. They even encountered malicious ghosts of the sage plane. Fortunately, everyone's cultivation was extraordinary, and they were all able to deal with them. If it was an ordinary team, they would probably have been wiped out on the spot if they encountered a malicious ghost of the sage plane. However, along the way, they still did not encounter the legendary Ghost King. They did not know if they were lucky, or if the so-called Ghost King did not exist at all. This is the gloomy sky ghost palace. Come, let's go in. The red-robed old monster had been here a few times. He took the lead and rushed in. Yi Shiwen and the others also followed in. Yi Shiwen and the others felt a burst of fluctuations in the surrounding space. By the time they came to their senses, they were already in a huge palace hall. This palace hall was more than 10,000 feet in length, width, and height. It was very huge. In the most central area of this palace hall, there were thrones placed one after another. It seemed like a conference center. However, unlike ordinary thrones, these thrones were outlined with ferocious ghosts. The ghostly aura soared into the sky, making people feel frightened just by looking at them from afar. It was as if these ghosts were about to be reborn. At this time, Yi Shiwen heard the voice of the red-robed old monster. This is the 10,000 Ghost Palace of the Gloomy Sky Ghost Palace. The reason why the Gloomy Sky Ghost Palace has this nickname is because of this 10,000 Ghost Palace. Back then, after a powerful ghost emperor unified the world, he imitated the sages and established the 10,000 Ghost Palace. All the ghosts under his command had their own seats here. It was called the 10,000 Ghost Parade. Yi Shiwen glanced at the main hall. It seemed as if he could still see the scene of an invincible person in high spirits in the past. However, things remained the same, but the people had changed. The invincible and all-powerful person in the past was now nothing more than a cup of soil. Inside the main hall, there was a huge passageway. At the end of the passageway, there was an incomparably huge transmission array. The space fluctuated violently. Even though Yi Shiwen was far away, he could still feel it. Yi Shiwen knew that this should be the real entrance to the Muddy Sky Ghost Palace. This 10,000 Ghost Palace itself was nothing. It was located in the Muddy Sky Ghost Domain all year round. However, the teleportation array in the 10,000 Ghost Palace only opened once every 10,000 years, so it was very unstable. Because of this, everyone would be teleported to a different location. Otherwise, the red-robed old freak would not have asked everyone to gather at the 10,000 Ghost Heart-Devouring Grass. In the surroundings of the 10,000 Ghost Palace, there were hundreds of huge stone pillars. Each stone pillar was so big that it would take 10 people to encircle it. On these stone pillars, there were also many images of malicious spirits. They were vivid and lifelike, as if they could fly out from the stone pillars. In fact, it even contained the essence, energy, and spirit of a powerful malicious ghost. After Yi Shiwen arrived, he realized that they were not the first ones to come. At this time, there were hundreds of experts from various races in the 10,000 Ghost Palace, and almost all of them were experts above the Sage Plane. It made sense. If one was not in the Sage Plane, there was almost no way to pass through the layers of obstruction of those malicious spirits. When there were many malicious spirits, there were hundreds of thousands of them. It was simply unimaginable in other places. However, although there were not many people in Yi Shiwen's group, all of them were elites. As such, they soon attracted the attention of many people. Many people looked over, and there were also a few teams formed by experts at the peak of the Sage Plane, like Yi Shiwen's group. Their eyes only stayed for a moment, and they did not dare to stay for too long. After all, in a place like this, no one wanted to offend someone for no reason. They would have inexplicably gained a group of opponents. Suddenly, Yi Shiwen felt that someone was staring at him. He raised his head and saw an old man in a blood-red robe staring at him. Before Yi Shiwen could say anything, the old man in a red robe immediately stepped forward and asked, "Friend Shuelian, why do you keep staring at my friend? It's not polite." The old man in a red robe, Shuelian, only snorted coldly. His pupils contracted slightly, and then he said, You'll have to ask him about that. There's no way to hide from killing someone from the blood-refining clan." The blood-refining clan. Yi Shiwen suddenly understood why the old man in a red robe was so hostile toward him. It turned out that it had something to do with the blood-refining clan. He had indeed killed a doctrine-proving expert from the blood-refining clan before. "Friend, how did you end up provoking this old thing?" The blood-refining clan founded by this old thing is the local snake in this area. It's very difficult to provoke them. Moreover, their clan has a secret method. If you kill someone from the blood-refining clan, you will automatically be implanted with a blood curse. This blood curse is usually invisible, But once someone from the blood refining clan approaches, the blood refining clan will automatically sense this blood curse. The old man in a red robe explained. Yi Shiwen smiled slightly. No wonder this Shuelian could recognize him at first glance. He had thought that there was no problem with his technique at that time, but it seemed that he had underestimated the people of this world. There was actually such a curse. However, he did not explain much and just calmed his heart. Although this blood curse was invisible, who was Yi Shiwen? It could be said that he knew his body like the back of his hand. If there was something extra, no matter how well it was hidden, it would not be able to escape his eyes. He quickly found the blood curse lurking in his bloodline. If it were not for the old man in a red robe's reminder, it would have been very difficult for him to discover it. Moreover, there was a wisp of consciousness hanging on this blood curse, and the direction it was connected to was Shuelian. It seemed that Shuelian intended to use this method to keep a close eye on him, leaving him no way to escape. Yi Shiwen could not help but sneer, but he remained calm and pretended not to notice. So what if I killed him? Yi Shiwen coldly said. In his heart, he was thinking that if that person was sent by the blood refining school, then this old guy might also know about the ghost slip. This made him somewhat nervous. The ghost slip was his secret. If Bao Wang came out, then he was afraid that it would attract a lot of trouble. There were many masters at the peak of the sage realm here. If they also came looking for trouble with Yi Shiwen, it would be a big problem. Good. What a crazy guy. I've seen many crazy people in my life, but you're the first one who dares to say that you kill my people in front of me. Shuelian's expression twisted as he said angrily. So what? However, he did not do anything because he was in the gloomy sky ghost temple. It was not because he was in awe of the 10,000 ghost temple, but because there was a kind of restriction in the 10,000 ghost temple. Once he made a move, he would suffer a shocking counterattack from the 10,000 ghost temple. It was said that this was a formation that the ghost emperor had set up in order to intimidate those unruly ghosts. It was extremely terrifying, and even now, this formation still existed. That was why many masters did not dare to make a move here. Otherwise, it would lead to a backlash from the 10,000 ghost temple, which would not be a laughing matter. In the past, too many people who did not believe in evil had died here. However, looking at Shuelian's appearance, when they really entered the gloomy sky ghost temple, it was likely that he would not let Yi Shiwen go. The others glanced at him and did not have much interest. Now that Shuelian was undoubtedly in a state of rage, they did not want to become Shuelian's target. The red-robed old monster looked at Yi Shiwen, then looked at Shuelian, and could not help but feel a little helpless. He did not expect that the helper he had just found would cause such big trouble. If it was just Shuelian alone, it would have been fine, but Shuelian was not alone at this time. He also belonged to a team of masters at the peak of the Sage Realm, and the nature of his team was the same. Don't worry, Taoist friend in red robe. Since I caused this trouble, I will solve it myself. You don't have to worry, Yi Shiwen said. The red-robed old monster took a deep look at Yi Shiwen, feeling a little relieved. What he did not know was that Yi Shiwen did not want the matter of the ghost slip to be exposed, so he did not want others to get involved. If this Shuelian did not know what was good for him, then he would just have to eliminate him in the gloomy sky ghost temple. However, Shuelian didn't know what his purpose was. Perhaps he didn't know about the existence of the ghost slip, or perhaps he wanted to conceal it. But although Shuelian stared at Yi Shiwen fiercely, he didn't reveal anything about the ghost slip, instead just attaching his divine sense to the blood curse on Yi Shiwen. What he did not know was that all these things were under Yi Shiwen's control. The concealment he thought he had done was actually exposed to Yi Shiwen's eyes. Another day passed, and the masters who came later finally arrived one after another. At this time, the long-awaited teleportation array finally began to activate. The connector cracked, bursting with endless light and rumbling as it operated. Everyone almost rushed to be the first to step forward and fly towards the teleportation array. Everyone must gather at the place where the 10,000 ghost heart-devouring grass is found. Then I will go first, the red-robed old monster said, and disappeared into the teleportation array. Yi Shiwen was not in a hurry. Just as he took a step forward, he found that Shuelian behind him was staring at him gloomily a sinister smile on his face, as if he was looking at some kind of prey, a very strange sight. Yi Shiwen sneered, just glanced at him, and then instantly stepped into the teleportation array. Chapter 26:20. Inside the gloomy Heaven Ghost Temple was a huge miniature world, just like the space inside Tianyuan Mirror. However, compared to the damaged Tianyuan Mirror, the miniature world inside the gloomy Heaven Ghost Temple was undoubtedly much larger. The ground was gray and decaying, constantly bubbling and exuding poisonous gas. Rotten trees were scattered all over the place, and the air was filled with a pungent smell. This was the interior of the gloomy Heaven Ghost Temple. In the distance, a bone-chilling astral wind was constantly blowing, mixed with sharp ghost cries, giving off an urge to tremble. This should be the interior of the gloomy Heaven Ghost Temple. Yi Shiwen glanced around and swept out with his divine sense, confirming that no one else had been transmitted to the same place as him. In this place, there was no way to expand his divine sense to its limit, and it was difficult to guarantee that it could even extend for 10,000 miles. However, Yi Shiwen had just flown 100 miles when he felt the blood curse in his body begin to tremble, and a divine sense was growing stronger and stronger. Yi Shiwen immediately calculated and knew that Shuel Yin must have chased after him. Yi Shiwen sneered slightly. Chasing after him was just courting death. However, he did not stop. Although he had never been to the gloomy Heaven Ghost Temple before, the old monster in red robes had already sent him a map of the gloomy Heaven Ghost Temple. Although not all of the places were marked, the old monster in red robes had been here several times, so Yi Shiwen didn't need to wander around in confusion. His top priority now was to find the place where the old monster in red robes had told him about the illusory sky godsand. Once he seized the illusory sky godsand, his goal would be more than half completed. Yi Shiwen's figure constantly swept through the void, like a sharp sword cutting through everything. Many ghosts had not even been able to approach before they turned into nothingness, unable to approach Yi Shiwen at all. One day later, in a dense forest inside gloomy Heaven Ghost Temple, Shuel Yin and his group finally gathered together. In addition to Shuel Yin, there were also two huge, strange beasts. One was a ferocious bird covered in crimson scales, a very famous ferocious bird called the Scarlet Scale Monster. It was said that this ferocious bird had the bloodline of an ancient fire phoenix. The other was a blood-red celestial horse. Its eyes were crimson, and they flickered with hellish flames. Its teeth were not neat, but rather sharp. It was a variant of the celestial horse, and it was much more ferocious than ordinary celestial horses. It liked to eat yuan spirits, and according to many legends, it could even stop children from crying. Moreover, these weren't anyone's spiritual beasts, but rather two unrivaled experts. It was just that they weren't willing to take human form, directly appearing with their original appearances. In addition to these two ferocious beasts, there were also two humanoid creatures. The reason why they were humanoid was because they only had the shape of a human, but at a glance, it was obvious that they weren't from the human race. One of them had a pair of huge, demonic wings on his back, and his face was green with fangs. He was a member of the Great Devil Clan. The other had sea blue scales all over his body, and he exuded a kind of oceanic aura and fluctuations. He was a top expert of the sea race. Old Shuel Yin, why did you call us all here? The blood-red celestial horse snorted and said very impatiently. That's right, Shuel Yin. Although we had an agreement before, we have no interest in helping you take revenge on someone. The great devil crossed his arms over his shoulders. This team itself was a temporary group, so the so-called agreement was of no use to them. Not to mention restraining them and asking them for help. I don't think so, the ferocious bird said with a somewhat amused look. No matter how annoying that guy is, you can just hunt him down afterwards. There's no need to call us all here, just for him. As soon as he said this, everyone seemed to have thought of something and stared at Shuel Yin. Since I've gathered all of you here, there's nothing for me to hide, Shuel Yin said lightly. That's right, killing him is not just a matter of personal grievances. More importantly, he has taken something very important from me. What could it be that you can't forget until now? The sea race experts looked at Shuai Yin strangely. One had to know that at their level, ordinary things were no longer important to them. So how could something like this still cause them to be moved? Shuai Yin didn't seem to want to hide anything and immediately said, I won't hide it from you. It's a map. A map? Is it some kind of treasure map? The blood-red blood celestial horse asked. One had to know that this place was the base of the Ghost Emperor, so it wasn't impossible to say what kind of treasure was left here. Yes, it's a treasure map. The thing marked on the treasure map isn't some kind of treasure. It's just a divine tree that the Ghost Emperor found somewhere. Could it be the Ghost Yuan tree? The great demon immediately screamed. Is it the legendary Ghost Yuan tree that constantly absorbs the blood essence of the masters killed by the Ghost Emperor and bears the Ghost Yuan fruit? That's right, it's this Ghost Origin tree. This Ghost Origin tree wasn't killed along with the death of the Ghost Emperor. Instead, it was left somewhere in the omniscient Ghost Land. Shuai Yin said, Originally, I found out about this Ghost Yuan tree from a letter, so I came here and established blood refining sect in order to find this Ghost Yuan tree. Originally, I found the ghost slip with a map engraved on it, but it was later lost. I estimate that the map is likely to be on that guy's body. So, it's the Ghost Origin tree. I have heard of it before. The Ghost Origin fruits produced by the Ghost Origin tree are first-rate wondrous fruits in this world. As long as the blood essence of experts is constantly watered, the Ghost Origin fruits can be produced. The effect of the Ghost Origin fruit is remarkable. Even with our cultivation bases, it can increase our cultivation bases, said the Oceanic clan expert as he nodded his head. At their level of cultivation, advancing a step further could be said to be an extravagant hope. Besides cultivating bitterly, ordinary treasures of the heavens and the earth were utterly useless to them. And it was precisely because of this that the Ghost Origin fruit seemed to be even more precious. Everyone's mind was suddenly moved. If it was just an ordinary thing, it naturally wouldn't be able to move them, but the Ghost Yuan fruit was different. The reason why they took the risk to enter the turbid ghost domain was to have a chance to improve their cultivation. Now that the Ghost Yuan fruit was in front of them, how could they let it go so easily? In that case, it's time for that guy to die. The blood-red blood, celestial horse's face unexpectedly showed a very cruel expression. An innocent man gets into trouble because of his wealth. Great Devil's face also showed the same ferocious expression. When the time comes, I want the Ghost Yuan tree, but I don't want the Ghost Yuan fruit. I'll give it all to you, how about it? Shuai Yin said, Old man, you think too highly of yourself. Although the Ghost Yuan fruit is readily available, it can't be compared to the Ghost Yuan tree. The red-scaled monster roared and flapped its wings. Although it had shrunk, it still looked very huge. The others also looked at Shuai Yin with dissatisfaction. If there was only the Ghost Origin fruit, they might be satisfied with it. However, since there was a Ghost Origin tree, how could they be satisfied with that? Shuai Yin, do you think it's appropriate for you to say such words? The blood-red blood celestial horse looked at Shuai Yin coldly. I don't think there's any need to explain the role of the Ghost Yuan tree. If we want to go further, it's simply impossible to rely on ordinary cultivation. Only by relying on the Ghost Yuan fruit can we have a chance. Do you think we'll give up so easily? But don't forget, I was the one who discovered the Ghost Yuan tree first. Shuai Yin glared angrily as the blood aura around his body continued to surge. What do you mean by first come, first served? Do you think we're all 3-year-old children? Do you think we'll give up just because of your words? The Sea Clan expert sneered. Good. Then let's get the Ghost Yuan tree first. As for how to distribute it, we'll decide when the time comes. How about it? Shuai Yin thought about it for a moment. Since he had already gathered all of them here, it was naturally impossible to let them leave so easily, so he could only come up with this method. I agree. I agree as well. Let's go. What are we waiting for? Let's kill that little brat and seize the Ghost Yuan tree. Yi Shiwen naturally didn't know that because of him, Shuai Yin had even gathered all the other experts here. But even if he knew, he wouldn't feel afraid. However, he could feel that Shuai Yin was constantly approaching. He must have used the blood curse as a way to locate him, and with the constant enhancement of his divine sense, Yi Shiwen could easily judge that Shui Lian was constantly approaching. However, at this time, Yi Shiwen had no time to pay attention to these people. According to the map given by red-robed old monster, after flying for 3 days and 3 nights, Yi Shiwen finally arrived at a small space. From afar, he could see the illusory sky divine sand flowing like a river, as if it was flowing from the beginning of time to the end. Finally found it, Yi Shiwen showed a slight smile on his face. Although he had experienced some twists and turns, he had finally found the most important material for the transference talisman, the illusory sky divine sand. Yi Shiwen immediately grabbed it and passed through the illusory sky divine sand. It's an illusion. No, it's a spatial distortion. Yi Shiwen immediately judged that the space around the illusory sky divine sand had spontaneously formed a spatial distortion, which was why the transference talisman required the illusory sky divine sand. Spatial distortion. Tear it for me? A burst of golden light erupted from Yi Shiwen's hands and directly tore open the distorted space. Then he saw the main body of the phantom sky god sand. However, he didn't get a chance to act when he suddenly heard a loud roar. Chapter 26-21. Suddenly, a huge figure leaped out of the illusory divine sand and opened its bloody mouth to bite down on Yi Shiwen. "You're courting death, beast!" Yi Shiwen sneered. A ball of thunder power appeared in his hand and turned into a thunderblade. Then he slashed down fiercely. However, Yi Shiwen found it strange that his thunderblade had actually passed through this bloody mouth, just like when he had grabbed the phantom heavenly sand a moment ago. At this critical moment, Yi Shiwen stamped his feet, and his figure instantly flew out to avoid this astonishing bite. Boom! Although nothing was bitten, the huge bite force directly caused the void to tremble violently. It was obvious that this bite force had reached a terrifying level. At this moment, Yi Shiwen finally saw what this thing was. It turned out to be an incomparably huge python. This python's entire body was overflowing with light. It seemed as if it had been cast out of crystal. Its body was thousands of feet long. However, it had been hidden in the illusory, heavenly sand from the beginning. Therefore, Yi Shiwen hadn't discovered it. Now that it had just come out, it immediately shook the world. Is this beast the ferocious creature that guarded the illusory divine sand as mentioned by the red-robed old freak? Yi Shiwen immediately remembered that the red-robed old freak had once mentioned a ferocious creature sleeping in the illusory divine sand. It should be this huge python. It was born in this kind of divine creature, and its body itself was composed of illusory divine sand. That was why Yi Shiwen's attack failed. Yi Shiwen narrowed his eyes, and a shocking, killing intent burst out from them. This huge python's attack failed to bite Yi Shiwen to death, so it continued to roar and spit out its huge tongue. In an instant, he launched his counterattack. His body rolled in the illusory sky divine sand. In an instant, the illusory sky divine sand swept up infinite power. It transformed into a huge storm and rushed towards Yi Shiwen to kill him. Yi Shiwen slashed out with his sword and directly split apart the illusory sky divine sand. However, he discovered that this giant python was mixed in with the illusory sky divine sand and unexpectedly launched an attack. It opened its bloody mouth and swallowed Yi Shiwen. "Same move!" Yi Shiwen coldly snorted. He grabbed a thunderblade in his hand and chopped it down. A strange thing happened. The space around the giant python was torn apart, and the tear spread directly to the python's body. If the space where an ordinary person was standing was torn apart, they would not be spared and would be torn apart alive. That's why they usually don't let the space tear spread to their bodies. However, this giant python was different. It wasn't directly torn out at all. On the contrary, after the space was torn, another giant python emerged. And this was the true body of this giant serpent and where it truly resided. Clang! After a huge collision, Yi Shiwen's thunderblade chopped on the head of the giant python. A sound of metal friction broke out. It couldn't hurt this giant python at all. It could only leave a faint white mark on the python's skin. The defensive power of the scales on this giant python's body was really ridiculously high. Even Yi Shiwen was amazed. Even so, this giant python was knocked away. Although most of the power was dissolved by the scales on the surface of its body, the remaining part was extremely violent. Roar! After this giant python was knocked away by Yi Shiwen, it instantly became furious as if it was provoked. It instantly went berserk. Rumble! Suddenly, a mass of light erupted from this giant python's body and submerged into the surrounding space. Then, only to feel that the surrounding space began to tremble violently. After the violent fluctuations, cracks began to appear. Moreover, it was like a spider web that was getting bigger and bigger. In just a short while, it densely covered the entire sky. Then, the entire space collapsed, and Yi Shiwen was instantly buried in it. At this time, all the laws had lost their effect. All the laws could not keep up with the leading role of the law of space. Everything just now seemed slow, but in fact it happened extremely fast. At this time, the giant python had just fallen into the illusory sky divine sand. Its body instantly absorbed a lot of illusory sky divine sand when it came into contact with the illusory sky divine sand. Its injuries immediately improved a lot. That was because it was a spirit born from the illusory sky divine sand. Later on, it gained intelligence and cultivated to this level. Throughout the countless years, there had been people who had entered, but very few of them had been able to make it suffer. Most of them had not even been able to dodge its initial attacks and had been devoured. This human was a bit special, but it was just a bit special. In the eyes of this giant python, a bit of human-like expression flashed, and it looked a bit proud. You do have some skills, but this is as far as you can go. Suddenly, the giant python heard a voice, and then a figure jumped out of the collapsed void. It was Yi Shiwen. At the critical moment, he didn't even move. Just by relying on the gilded tyrant form, he resisted the violent fluctuations when the space collapsed. It could be seen that his current physical body was tyrannical to what extent. This is impossible. Such a thought just flashed in the mind of this giant python, but it saw that Yi Shiwen's figure had already rushed in front of it. Boom! Yi Shiwen's fist smashed down directly, and the python screamed in pain, feeling dizzy for a while. Boom! Yi Shiwen was riding on the head of this giant python and was constantly punching it one after another. Boom! 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 Stop hitting me! I surrender! I surrender! Suddenly, a tender voice came from the python's mouth, and it sounded like a child's voice. You surrender? Yi Shiwen was a little stunned because he didn't expect this giant python to surrender, and it was even a child. You are not an adult yet. Of course, the giant python said. Its huge body combined with its childish voice sounded strange no matter how one listened to it. Although I've gained sentience a long time ago, I'm still far from adulthood. Our spirit race is different from your human race. How can adulthood be so easy? Yi Shiwen fainted a little. It was not an adult yet. If he let it become an adult, then it would be terrible. Are you a creature born in the illusory sky divine sand? Yi Shiwen asked. Yes, I am a spirit race born from the illusory sky divine sand. The giant python said, I opened my spiritual wisdom very early, but I have never seen a human as powerful as you. Yi Shiwen nodded and suddenly realized. No wonder he saw some characteristics of the illusory sky divine sand in this giant python. It turned out that it was a kind of spiritual creature born from the illusory sky divine sand. He had heard of this kind of creature before. It was a sentient life form, also known as the spirit race. The conditions for their birth were very harsh. They could only be born under some special circumstances. However, once they were born, they were basically very powerful. Moreover, the more powerful their body was, the more boundless their future cultivation path would be. For example, the mythical first cloud in the world, the first wisp of breeze, and so on. The spirit race that was born from it was even more powerful. The illusory sky divine sand itself was a rare heavenly treasure. So, the spirit race that was born from it was naturally extremely powerful. Since you plan to surrender to me, then I will place a restriction on you. Yi Shiwen didn't want to waste time with him and directly said, "You have to have a name in the future. From now on, you will be called Illusory Sky Divine Python." If it was an ordinary demon beast, he might not even look at it. However, this spirit race was different. Its future achievements were simply limitless. It was not inferior to those so-called great geniuses in the outside world. Illusory Sky Divine Python? The giant python nodded. "Not bad, not bad. It's quite impressive. Haha, from now on, I will be called Illusory Sky Divine Python." The Illusory Sky Divine Python's mind was like that of a child's. Its mood was like the weather in June. It could change at will. Even if it was about to be subdued, it seemed that nothing could make it happier and more excited than having an impressive name. "I can surrender to you. However, you must let me eat Illusory Sky Divine Sand in the future. I need to eat this Illusory Sky Divine Sand in order to grow up. Otherwise, I won't be able to grow up." The Illusory Sky Divine Python stated its conditions. Yi Shiwen blushed with shame. It hadn't grown up yet. If it was allowed to grow up, wouldn't it be boundless? He had seen many huge creatures. However, it seemed that it was very rare to see such a huge creature, and it was still in its infancy. If it grew up, perhaps it would be bigger than the star Colossus. "No problem. I only need a part of the Illusory Sky Divine Sand to refine the transference talisman. The rest is not very useful." Yi Shiwen immediately agreed. Moreover, if he could subdue the Illusory Sky Divine Python, then the Illusory Sky Divine Python would be on his side. Naturally, the stronger the better. "That's good. Then there's no problem." The Illusory Sky Divine Python immediately released its soul and allowed Yi Shiwen to place a restriction on it. It didn't have the slightest bit of unwillingness. In fact, it seemed to be very happy. "I had wanted to go out long ago. However, I couldn't leave the Illusory Sky Divine Sand. Moreover, none of those people were a match for me. So, I didn't want to go out with some weaklings." Yi Shiwen suddenly understood. It seemed that the Illusory Sky Divine Python had devoured a lot of experts in such a long time. However, no matter how fierce this Illusory Sky Divine Python was now, its life and death was in his hands after he had placed a restriction on it. So, he had nothing to worry about. He immediately took out the Tianyuan mirror and shot out a huge blood-red light. The Illusory Sky Divine Sand and the Illusory Sky Divine Python were absorbed into the mirror. Then he left this place in a satisfied manner and rushed towards the location described on the ghost slip. Chapter 26-22. Since the Gloomy Sky Ghost Palace was only open for a limited time, they had to leave before the palace closed again. Otherwise, they would be locked inside for more than 10,000 years. If they only entered the Gloomy Sky Ghost Palace occasionally, then the chances of encountering the legendary Ghost King were not very high. However, if they were locked inside for 10,000 years, then the chances of encountering the Ghost King were too high. In the past, there have been people who could not leave before the closing time, but no one had ever heard of anyone who could survive until the next 10,000 years. Therefore, no one dared to delay at all, including Yi Shiwen. Moreover, he had to buy time so that he could gather with the red-robed old monster. Whoosh! Yi Shiwen's figure constantly shuttled through the Gloomy Sky Ghost Palace. Countless malicious ghosts wanted to surround and intercept him, but their speed was far inferior to Yi Shiwen's. Even from a distance, Yi Shiwen could feel countless ghostly auras constantly approaching. Yi Shiwen suddenly felt that he had broken into a huge foggy area. The surrounding visibility was less than a kilometer. For ordinary people, this visibility was already very high. However, for Yi Shiwen, this had already compressed his movements to the smallest stage. Even the distance of a pounce was not so small. If something were to happen, then he wouldn't be able to react in time. According to the map information given to him by the red-robed old monster, this should be the core of the Gloomy Sky Ghost Palace. It could be said that 70 to 80% of the masters who came to the Gloomy Sky Ghost Palace had died in this Gloomy Sky Ghost Palace. In the end, There were only a few who could reach the other side of the gloomy sky ghost palace. But this gloomy sky ghost palace was located in the center of the entire gloomy sky ghost palace. They had to pass through it. Behind the gloomy sky ghost palace, there were many good things. Even with Yi Shiwen's current cultivation, it was difficult to expand his divine senses. Legend had it that this gloomy sky ghost palace was a terrifying formation that was personally set up by the Ghost Emperor. After all, even masters in the King Realm would find it difficult to do anything here, let alone a sage realm master. Fortunately, there was the map information left by the red-robed old monster to guide the way. Yi Shiwen was not at a loss and could only move forward. However, in order to be cautious, Tianyuan Mirror and Demon Flag had already flown out from his body and were constantly emitting bursts of light rays that enveloped him. Even if those malicious ghosts wanted to catch him off guard, they would still be able to buy him enough time. It took him a whole day to cover more than half of the area. However, he became even more vigilant when he reached this area. If the most dangerous place in the gloomy sky ghost palace was the ghost fog area, then the most dangerous place in the ghost fog area was this core area. This was because the legendary Ghost King had appeared in this place, and it was unknown how many experts it had devoured. Suddenly, a silhouette flashed in front of him. Yi Shiwen suddenly became vigilant. He looked from afar and saw a silhouette covered with long green hair passing by from afar. Damn it, it's a zombie! Yi Shiwen's eyesight was so sharp that he recognized that the green-haired figure that was flying over was none other than a zombie. He didn't know how many famous experts had fallen in this place in the past. Once these people were transformed into zombies, they would become a very troublesome existence. However, it was just troublesome, nothing more. With his current cultivation, unless he encountered the legendary Ghost King, otherwise, ordinary ghosts wouldn't be able to do anything to him. He activated his divine sense to the maximum, and the blood-red light of Tianyuan Mirror above his head swept out in the sky. It constantly swept into the chaotic ghost fog area. Fortunately, he didn't see that green-haired zombie again. It seemed that it wasn't coming for him. Yi Shiwen heaved a sigh of relief and promptly unfolded his wind and thunder wings. His silhouette swept out at an extremely fast speed and even issued bursts of thunder sounds. Not long after he had left, that green-haired zombie appeared in the place where he had just appeared. It stared at the direction where Yi Shiwen had left with its big copper bell-like eyes. It seemed as if it was thinking about something. It didn't look like an ordinary ghost that didn't have the slightest bit of intelligence. On the back of this green-furred zombie, there was actually a pair of huge silver wings. It was actually an extremely high-ranked flying yiksha. When its wings also evolved to a golden color, it was highly likely that it would evolve into the king of zombies, the drought demon. However, even if it wasn't a drought demon, this flying yiksha was also very terrifying. Even Yi Shiwen had a frightened look on his face a moment ago. Roar! He let out a loud roar, and roars resounded one after another in the ghost fog area. It seemed that many ghosts were gathering towards his direction. At this time, many people in the ghost fog area heard these ghost cries one after another, and they couldn't help but shiver. Ordinary ghosts couldn't even make them slightly moved with their cultivation. However, the ghosts in the ghost fog area were completely different. Each of them might have been a famous expert when they were alive. In the past, many of them had come to the ghost fog area like them, but after they had fallen, they had turned into ghosts. So, they couldn't help but feel nervous. Yi Shiwen walked forward, and he naturally heard these ghost cries one after another. He frowned slightly. These ghost cries seemed to be responding to something. Could it be that a ghost king was about to be born? Suddenly, Yi Shiwen bumped into a battle in front of him. He saw a beautiful woman dressed in a moonlight robe on one side. She held a sword in her hand, and it was constantly spewing out sword chi, slashing through the sky. And in front of her was an extremely terrifying, malicious ghost. Its whole body was jet black, and it had a green face and fangs. It was unknown what its original body was, but it could actually resist the sword chi without any problem. One must know that ordinary malicious ghosts were condensed from the spirit and resentment without a physical body. So, It was often difficult for them to really have a powerful physical body, which was also their weakness. However, this malicious ghost could actually resist the sword chi with its physical body, which showed its extraordinary cultivation. Moreover, it actually didn't have a tyrannical physique like a zombie, which was rare in the world. Under the attack of this malicious ghost, the woman kept retreating and was retreating again and again. She was not a match for it at all. At this time, when she suddenly saw Yi Shiwen appear, her eyes immediately lit up. "Fellow Taoist, please do me a favor." The woman desperately resisted and said, hoping that Yi Shiwen could also help her. Although they belonged to different forces, at this time, these malicious ghosts were their common enemy. Yi Shiwen originally didn't intend to intervene in such a battle, but he was a little interested in this malicious ghost that had such a powerful physical body. So he simply made a move. "Get out of my way!" Yi Shiwen pointed his finger toward the void, and a huge sword chi fell from the sky, turned into a sharp sword, and slashed towards the malicious ghost. The malicious ghost didn't care at first, but it just sneered and punched towards Yi Shiwen's sword chi. "Idiot!" Yi Shiwen sneered. However, when the ferocious ghost's fist collided with the sword chi, it instantly howled. It was unknown when, but its entire arm was attached to the power of thunder, and it was constantly eroding its ghost power. One must know that a creature of extreme, Yin like him, was most afraid of such energy with the power of extreme yang. Almost all of a sudden, its entire arm was blown up. That malicious ghost immediately chopped off his entire arm, causing blood to continuously drip down. These malicious ghosts had already condensed into corporeal bodies, and some had even become ghostly immortals. They were completely different from ordinary ghosts that had no corporeal bodies. It just clutched its arm and looked at Yi Shiwen in horror. It wasn't that it hadn't seen sword chi before, but it had never seen such a terrible sword chi, and it was actually able to destroy its entire arm. "Phantom Sky Python, go and swallow this guy." Yi Shiwen simply didn't bother to attack, and let the Phantom Sky Python inside the Tianyuan mirror take action. "All right, leave it to me, ah-ha-ha-ha." A blood-red light swept out of the Tianyuan mirror, and an incomparably huge figure jumped out of it, and then directly opened its bloody mouth and bit towards the malicious ghost. It was the Phantom Sky Python. Bang! At this critical moment, the malicious ghost, who hadn't relaxed his vigilance against Yi Shiwen, finally escaped this fatal bite. However, the entire void was shaking violently, and the terrifying bite force made the malicious ghost's face turn deathly pale. It was simply a monster. The Phantom Sky Python didn't care so much, and directly pounced towards the malicious ghost. Its body was thousands of feet long, and almost blocked the entire void. It had suffered enough from Yi Shiwen, and had been taught a ruthless lesson. However, this didn't mean that it wasn't powerful. On the contrary, the Phantom Sky Python was a member of the innate spirit race, and its body was made of phantom sky sand. It was very powerful, but unfortunately, it had encountered a monster like Yi Shiwen. Its huge tail was constantly swinging down like a mountain, and the malicious ghost kept dodging. It activated the ghost steps and dodged very quickly. However, it was soon forced into a dead end by the Phantom Sky Python, and there was no other way out. Bang! His ghostly body was smashed into pulp on the spot, causing ghostly blood to spray out. Next, the illusionary sky divine python swallowed his ghostly body. This little fellow was not picky at all. It could eat anything. Whoosh! All of this took a long time to describe, but in fact, only a moment had passed. The malicious ghost, which had terrified the woman, had died at the hands of the Phantom Sky Python. Chapter 26-23. The entire process took less than 15 minutes. The woman who had been watching from the sidelines was dumbfounded. She knew how terrifying that malicious ghost was. It was almost at the peak of the middle stage of the Sage Plane, and was about to enter the later stage of the Sage Plane. Although she was also in the middle stage of the Sage Plane, the difference in strength between the two of them was too great. Otherwise, she would not have been beaten to the point where she had to retreat. However, This opponent that she found difficult to deal with was not difficult at all for this person who suddenly appeared. He almost crippled the malicious ghost's arm with a single strike of his sword. The spirit beast that he released afterward was even more terrifying. It actually swallowed the malicious ghost in 2 or 3 moves. She quickly stepped forward and said, "Thank you for your help, my friend. I am Tian Wei. Thank you very much." "It was nothing. Don't worry about it, my friend." Yi Shiwen waved his hand and said. The Tianyuan mirror in his hand flashed a bloody light and directly took the illusory sky python into it. Tian Wei bowed slightly and said, "No matter what, my friend saved me. That is the truth. I don't know if you can take me with you. Although I am not strong enough, I can protect myself. I will not drag you down," Tian Wei said quickly. After this incident, she finally understood why the Ghost Fog area was the most dangerous place in the entire Gloomy Sky Ghost Palace. If it were not for Yi Shiwen's help, she would have been in danger. After this battle, she finally understood that it was impossible for her to move unhindered in the Ghost Fog region by relying on her own strength. Even if she didn't encounter the legendary Ghost King, it was very likely that she would be unable to advance or retreat if she only encountered an ordinary malicious spirit. But if she could go with Yi Shiwen, the safety factor would undoubtedly be much higher. "Let's go. Since we have met here, it must be fate that brought us together. I'll take you along, but we'll have to go our separate ways after we leave the Ghost Fog area." Yi Shiwen thought for a moment and nodded. After leaving the Ghost Fog area, he would not let anyone follow him. Otherwise, the secret of the ghost slip would be exposed. "Thank you, brother," Tian Wei said gratefully, "but I still advise you to go back. It's not like you don't have the strength to protect yourself, but there are too many dangers inside the Muddy Sky Ghost Palace. It's very difficult to rely on your strength to move unhindered, and you may lose your life if you're not careful. So why bother?" Yi Shiwen warned. While his plane was similar to Tian Wei's, their powers were on a completely different level. Even those at the pinnacle of the Sage Plane would have been defeated by him. Only those legendary geniuses and geniuses would have been able to stop him. "I have my reasons for coming. Please forgive me, fellow Taoist." Tian Wei thought for a moment. She knew that what Yi Shiwen said was reasonable, but she had no other choice but to come here, so she could only brace herself and go. "Then I won't say anything more. Follow me," Yi Shiwen said. With just one step, he crossed hundreds of miles in an instant. If it weren't for the fact that he couldn't see clearly in the Ghost Fog area, his speed would have been much faster. But even so, Tian Wei was left dumbstruck. Yi Shiwen's speed was simply too fast. She could only grit her teeth and keep up with him. Although Yi Shiwen had already slowed down his speed, but his speed was still too fast for Tian Wei. She simply couldn't keep up with him and could only keep up with him. With Yi Shiwen leading the way, although they still encountered a few malicious ghosts, they were easily defeated by Yi Shiwen. After walking for a day and a night, they finally reached the edge of the Ghost Fog area. Yi Shiwen stopped and waited for a while. Tian Wei caught up with him. At this time, her face was already flushed and she was panting. She had almost burned her spiritual power to keep up with Yi Shiwen's speed for a day and a night. She had barely managed to keep up with Yi Shiwen's speed. Yi Shiwen's skills completely shocked her. This person looked young, but in terms of strength, he made her feel ashamed. During this day, she also recalled the names of many masters, but there was no way to think of who he was. He was so strange, and his strength was so strong. "Well, now that we have passed the Ghost Fog area, let's separate here," Yi Shiwen said. "Many thanks for your help, brother." "This little girl can't thank you enough," Tian Wei quickly said. Yi Shiwen didn't say much and just rushed forward. Although Tian Wei's skill was far inferior to his level, but to be on the safe side, Yi Shiwen still flew in the opposite direction. He flew for tens of thousands of miles, and then flew in the direction indicated by the ghost slip. He had been flying for 3 days and 3 nights. He had been flying nonstop towards the direction indicated on the ghost slip. He had been flying for 3 days and 3 nights at his current flying speed. So one could well imagine how far this distance was. He had almost reached the edge of the Gloomy Sky Ghost Palace. "Is this the place?" Yi Shiwen glanced at the surrounding environment. It was an incomparably huge valley, and the entire valley was buried in a fog. It was an array formation. However, Yi Shiwen was surprised to find that the Zhun method in this valley was not artificially arranged but naturally formed. No matter how perfect a man-made valley was, it was impossible for it to be as perfect and flawless as a natural formation that could not be carved by nature. However, this was not a problem for Yi Shiwen. He directly split the array formation of the entire valley with his sword. Finally, the situation inside the valley was exposed in front of Yi Shiwen. The entire valley was empty and flat, and there was nothing special about it. Only a huge tree with a ghost head growing in the center of the valley caught Yi Shiwen's attention. The leaves of this gigantic tree did not look like ordinary leaves. On the contrary, they were actually imprints of malicious spirits engraved on the leaves. Moreover, there were 30 fruits hanging on the branches of this tree. The fruits were exuding a kind of tempting fragrance. Yi Shiwen felt that his body and mind were relaxing just by inhaling this fragrance. It was as if he was absorbing heavenly treasures. What the hell is this tree? Why is its effect so significant? Yi Shiwen immediately understood that he must have encountered some kind of treasure. No wonder Shuel Yan was chasing after him. It was probably not for the so-called Tao-confirming god, but for this tree. Yi Shiwen desperately recalled the legends related to the gloomy sky ghost palace, trying to find the origin of this tree. Suddenly, his mind lit up. A ghost's head that can enhance one's cultivation. Could it be a ghost yuan tree? Yi Shiwen's eyes suddenly lit up. During this period of time, it was impossible for him to not do any homework, especially in such a dangerous place like the gloomy sky ghost domain. According to the information he had read, the ghost emperor had transplanted a ghost yuan tree, and from the description, it looked like this. If this was the case, then he was going to be rich. According to the legends, this ghost yuan tree could be said to be exclusive to the ghost emperor. The reason why the ghost emperor was able to unify the gloomy sky ghost domain in a short period of time and attract the attention of emperor king level powerhouses was greatly related to this ghost yuan tree. According to the legends, the ghost origin fruit that it bore was a heavenly treasure that could greatly increase the cultivation of the person who consumed it. The only flaw was that the conditions for the ghost origin tree to bear the ghost origin fruit were too cruel. They had to be fed by humans to bear the fruit. This was equivalent to indirectly devouring human flesh and blood. Although Yi Shiwen had devoured flesh and blood through the Tianyuan mirror for a period of time before, that was only to supplement his own cultivation. It was completely different from the ghost yuan fruit. Yi Shiwen was in ecstasy at this moment. If he had this ghost yuan tree in his hand, then his cultivation would be able to soar in a short period of time. In fact, it would even be comparable to those old monsters who had been cultivating for millions of years. At this time, he seemed to understand why the Ghost Emperor had brought disaster to the world in the past, even though he knew that it was extremely dangerous. So much so that he had eventually attracted the suppression of the Emperor King level powerhouses. This was probably related to this Ghost Yuan tree. The Ghost Yuan tree must be in the most turbulent environment in order to maximize its effect. Only in this turbulent environment, countless experts would die and transform into the nourishment of the Ghost Yuan tree. Only then his cultivation would be able to rapidly grow. In just a short period of time, countless cruel thoughts had already flashed in his mind. This Ghost Yuan tree seemed to have a kind of demonic ability that could lead people astray. Fortunately, just when he was about to lose control of himself, the enlightening mind ancient tree inside his body burst into bursts of flowing lights and overflowing colors and calmed his mind. Yi Shiwen slightly wiped off his cold sweat. It was hard to say whether he would become a big devil if he were to be led astray by these thoughts. At the very least, his heart would certainly produce a huge heart devil because of his desires. And it was very likely that he would die because of his own heart devil at that time. The practice of martial arts was to subdue one's inner desires, just like subduing those spirit beasts. If one were to be led astray by one's inner desires, then one would fall into a disadvantageous position. The Ghost Emperor has used his own experience to prove that this path is certainly not feasible. This Ghost Yuan tree is also very strange. It shouldn't be cursed or something like that, right? Yi Shiwen couldn't help but think. There probably wasn't anyone who could resist the temptation of advancing by leaps and bounds in a short period of time under such circumstances. However, he was very clear that even if one's cultivation increased, if one's realm and comprehension couldn't reach the required level, then everything would just be an illusion. In any case, the value of this Ghost Yuan tree is immeasurable. Just those 30 Ghost Yuan fruits alone are a huge fortune. Yi Shiwen's eyes lit up, and his big hand suddenly moved towards the Ghost Yuan tree to grab it. Whoosh! A sword light appeared out of thin air. Chapter 26-24. Rumble! As the sword fell, the ground cracked and collapsed in all directions. Only the entire valley, which was protected by the matrix, was not damaged. Everything else collapsed. The spiritual chi hand that Yi Shiwen had created was directly cut into pieces. The sword was simply too fast. What a strong sword chi, Yi Shiwen said coldly. His eyes were incomparably indifferent. He looked up and saw a figure flying over from afar. It was a middle-aged swordsman in ragged clothes who looked extremely embarrassed. The sword was almost going to burst out of his body. The power that could shatter the sky was nothing more than this. This person's face was extremely handsome, but his eyes had completely lost their spirit. There was no light at all. Kill, kill, kill. The middle-aged swordsman just kept repeating the word kill as if he had completely gone mad. Yi Shiwen could see at a glance that this swordsman had been possessed by the demons of his heart and had completely gone mad. However, his martial arts were also tyrannical and terrifying. If an ordinary person had been like this, they would have long died from chi deviation. The fact that he was still alive was enough to prove that his martial arts were terrifying. Yi Shiwen didn't know the origin of this person, but he was afraid that he had also come for the Ghost Yuan tree. Moreover, he hadn't left after he had gone crazy, but had been guarding this place all along. Perhaps it was because he had an inexhaustible obsession before he had gone crazy that he had been guarding this place. Swish! The middle-aged swordsman launched another attack. The sword light swept up and instantly stirred the sun, moon, and stars. The world changed color as if the world was going to return to chaos again. Yi Shiwen immediately felt an extremely dreadful sword chi piercing through the sky and bombarding towards his face. It was another existence at the peak of the sage realm. What was more terrifying was that he had gone mad and only had the instinct to kill. He had very few concerns and dared to use moves that ordinary people did not dare to use. In the face of such a top existence, Yi Shiwen would not take it lightly. The strength of this middle-aged swordsman was probably enough to compete with those monstrous Heaven's Pride experts. If he had not lost his mind and gone completely insane, he would have been even more difficult to deal with. Yi Shiwen wouldn't have easily fought against such an existence in normal times. However, he was determined to obtain the Ghost Yuan tree. So, he couldn't escape from this battle. Boom! Yi Shiwen's magical power rushed out of his body, and as if the floodgates had been opened, an endless torrent poured out in torrents. It was precisely because he had let go of the restrictions of the cultivation vest, and his imposing aura had risen crazily, rising all the way to the peak level. At the same time, his martial arts incarnation was added to his body, and his strength rose rapidly. Sky-turning seal. Yi Shiwen moved, and his divine power instantly followed. As he turned his palm, the entire world also turned upside down. Then it suddenly overturned. That scene was really shocking. Bang! Yi Shiwen immediately felt that his palm had fiercely collided with the opponent's sword chi. That sword chi had unexpectedly penetrated straight into his arm, wanting to kill him in an instant. Ding, ding, ding. Both of them took a few steps back, and the strength of both sides could be said to be almost equal. The middle-aged swordsman seemed to have gone crazy and didn't feel anything at all, but Yi Shiwen was secretly surprised. It should be known that he could be said to have used all his strength, but he could only be equal in strength. If the opponent was conscious, he was afraid that he would be at a disadvantage in a confrontation. He was still a notch weaker than those top-notch geniuses at the moment, and the most he could do was protect himself. However, once he made it to the pinnacle of the sage plane, he was confident that the situation would be completely reversed, and the tables would be turned. And because of this, the Ghost Yuan tree couldn't be given up. Kill! As soon as the middle-aged swordsman stopped, he immediately attacked Yi Shiwen again, as if he didn't know how to say anything else and only knew how to fight and kill. The entire ground was trembling under his magical power, and it was moving. The space also began to crackle and distort. His terrifying power was displayed vividly at this time. Before he went into chi deviation, his power had almost reached the peak. Unless he encountered a strong person in the titled king realm, no one could be a match for him. Again, overturning the sky seal. Yi Shiwen used the overturning the sky seal again. The seal fell, and the sky and earth collapsed. Boom! 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 There was an extremely fierce collision, and colorful rays of light splashed out. Every point of light could tear the sky apart. In an instant, the two had actually exchanged tens of thousands of moves. Every collision had the power to destroy the world. Yi Shiwen couldn't hold back, but the middle-aged swordsman didn't know what holding back was. His mind had long been blinded, and there was only complete killing, and complete killing. It was rare to have the opportunity to fight with an expert of this level, so Yi Shiwen didn't hold back at all. He used all kinds of unique skills. The 6 paths of reincarnation fist, the overturning the sky seal, the ruler's sword, and many other skills that could be called shocking in the outside world were used, causing the sky to tremble. And the middle-aged swordsman was simple and plain, only using a treasure sword to dominate the world, not giving way at all. Now, if this goes on, I will be the first to collapse. The fierce battle only lasted for a short time, but in fact, Yi Shiwen had consumed more than half of the spiritual power in his body. Although his strength had skyrocketed after using the martial arts incarnation, the consumption of spiritual power was also many times higher than before. After all, he was fighting a cross-level battle with a lower level. Whether it was in the realm or spiritual power, he simply didn't have an advantage. If he didn't have enough skills, and each of them was enough to shake the world, it would be impossible for him to fight a cross-level battle. There is no benefit in fighting with this madman until the end. It is better to take away the Ghost Yuan tree first. He turned his palm, and the Tianyuan mirror appeared in his palm. A blood-red light was thrown out, and the Phantom Sky Python was directly thrown out. First, help me stop this guy, Yi Shiwen said, and directly chased after the Ghost Yuan tree. Damn, what kind of monster did you provoke? The Phantom Sky Python shouted, and its huge snake tail quickly swatted down. A sword soared into the sky and directly broke the space barrier on its body and directly chopped its body. Dang! There was a sound like gold and iron colliding, and the void was shaking. The Phantom Sky Python was directly hit by the sword and was directly knocked back more than 100 meters. Although with its huge body, it seemed that it was only slightly knocked back. In fact, a majestic power was wreaking havoc on its body. Although the Phantom Sky Python had entered the peak of the Sage Plane, it was only slightly stronger than the average peak of the Sage Plane. Otherwise, it would not have been subdued by Yi Shiwen back then. Compared to this middle-aged swordsman, even though it was already crazy, it was still much weaker. Fortunately, Yi Shiwen did not ask it to kill the middle-aged swordsman, but only to delay him for a while. Kill! The sword in the middle-aged swordsman's hand released a shocking wave, and instantly burst out a sword light that was tens of thousands of meters long. The Phantom Sky Python roared, and its mouth spat out Phantom Sky divine sand all over the sky. Rumble! Countless space instantly collapsed in front of the Phantom Sky Python, and the power that spread out from the explosion directly collided with the sword light. In an instant, everything was annihilated. The battle between 2 pinnacle sages was terrifying. Perhaps only a battle between king-rank cultivators could be compared to the battle between 2 pinnacle sages. Above Yi Shiwen's head, the Tianyuan mirror flew out and turned into a sky full of bloody light, wrapping him in it. He did not care about anything else and rushed towards the Ghost Yuan tree. He grabbed the ghost yuan tree in his hand, but before he could even take a breath, a majestic resentment that seemed to have been suppressed for a long time was suddenly released, rushing towards him. Countless terrifying resentment seemed to have turned into fierce ghosts, rushing into his mind. Yi Shiwen felt as if he was in a hell of blood and fire. These resentment could even make a strong-willed god instantly become an idiot. It seemed as if the enlightening mind ancient tree had received a fierce provocation at this critical moment. It emitted an inexhaustible divine radiance. The flowing lights overflowed and covered the entire space of Yi Shiwen's spiritual awareness. All the resentment that had rushed into the spiritual awareness had been reduced to nothingness under the impact of these scattered lights. They had been transformed into pure spiritual energy and had been absorbed by the mysterious space. After a long time, these resentments were finally completely dispelled. Yi Shiwen finally came back to his senses. Fortunately, he had the protection of the enlightening mind ancient tree a moment ago. Otherwise, perhaps he would have been turned into an idiot by the impact. His willpower was firm. However, he wouldn't have been able to get away with such an impact. At this moment, he finally understood why the middle-aged swordsman had gone crazy. He was probably attacked by the resentment of the ghost yuan tree. This ghost yuan fruit was formed after killing a large number of masters, and their blood essence had turned into a fruit. The unreconciled resentment of these beheaded powerhouses was completely condensed in this fruit. How could an ordinary person withstand the impact of so much resentment? Moreover, these were the resentment of many Tao-confirming powerhouses, so powerful that it almost alarmed the heavens. Even with the strength of the middle-aged swordsman, he could not resist it, and had turned into a madman. Fortunately, Yi Shiwen had the Mingxin ancient tree, so his mind was stabilized, and he did not directly turn into an idiot. Although this ghost yuan tree was good, not everyone could bear its anger. And Yi Shiwen just happened to have the Mingxin ancient tree, which was the nemesis of this kind of resentment, so he could completely ignore it. Yi Shiwen no longer hesitated, and moved the entire valley into his Tianyuan mirror with his great magical power. Kill! The middle-aged swordsman saw this, and became even more irritable. Chapter 26-25. Although the middle-aged swordsman had completely lost his mind, there was only an inextinguishable obsession in his heart, and that was the obsession with the ghost yuan tree. Now that he saw the ghost yuan tree being taken away by Yi Shiwen, he suddenly went crazy. Bang! The illusory sky divine python was blasted away by the berserk middle-aged swordsman. It shrieked miserably as cracks appeared on its body. Its body was extremely tough, and ordinary attacks could not injure it. One could well imagine how terrifying this berserk middle-aged swordsman was. I can't hold on any longer. The huge body of the illusory sky python was flung away in the air, and a blood light enveloped it, taking it directly into the Tianyuan mirror. The middle-aged swordsman was completely crazy, and he rushed toward Yi Shiwen. However, Yi Shiwen's speed was not slow. The wings of wind and thunder behind him spread out instantly, like clouds in the sky, and in a flash, he had already flown tens of thousands of miles away. The middle-aged swordsman was chasing closely behind him, and he did not look like he was going to give up. He directly caught up with Yi Shiwen, and sword light shot out. The void within 1,000 miles was shaking violently, as if it was boiling water. The middle-aged swordsman was chasing closely behind Yi Shiwen, but Yi Shiwen's speed was even faster. His wings of wind and thunder were fully unleashed. Only a master who had entered the king-ranked realm could possibly catch up with him. Slowly, the gap between the two sides gradually widened. After chasing for 3 days and 3 nights, Yi Shiwen finally completely shook off the crazy middle-aged swordsman. At this time, Yi Shiwen's spiritual power in his body had been almost depleted. If it were not for the Phoenix regeneration technique that constantly generated spiritual power, he would have been exhausted. After all, the spiritual power consumption was much higher than flying at full speed. Yi Shiwen hid behind a spatial fault and arranged a magic array to converge all of his aura. The consumption of his magic power was very serious, but it wasn't a big deal. He had already recovered more than half of his magic power in a short period of time. This time, he wanted to successfully rush to the peak of the Sage Realm middle stage in one go. At that time, his cultivation would leap, and he would not be afraid of anyone unless he met a master in the king-ranked realm. Originally, it would have taken him a long time to reach this step unless he chose to swallow the golden-backed dragon carp king, which had not been completed yet. Otherwise, he would have to slowly cultivate in seclusion. According to his original plan, it would have taken him at least 100 years to complete this step. But now, it seemed that he could completely skip this 100 years. For others, the biggest problem of swallowing the ghost origin fruit was how to resist the baleful chi within it. Just refining the baleful chi within it would take at least a few decades or even a century before it could be done. This wasn't a problem for Yi Shiwen. After all, he had the enlightening mind ancient tree to stabilize his mind. So, he didn't need to worry about anything. In this chaotic space, Yi Shiwen swallowed the ghost origin fruit, and in an instant, an inexhaustible amount of essence chi poured into his body, transforming into monstrous magical power, and dispersed into his limbs and bones. The ghost origin tree was famous, but it could only condense 30 ghost origin fruits at most. It could not condense more, and each ghost origin fruit was very precious. Of course, the ghost yuan fruit was different every time, because the level of the ghost yuan fruit was different from the one he killed. The higher the level of the opponent he killed, the more obvious the effect of the ghost yuan fruit. He had just swallowed the ghost origin fruit and instantly felt that his spiritual power was recovering at an astonishing speed. In fact, he had almost recovered to the peak in an instant. Moreover, his martial power was actually rising at an astonishing speed. This feeling was 10 times, 100 times faster than when he cultivated in seclusion, and it was still rising at a crazy rate. Since he was not going to break through to the next level, Yi Shiwen did not encounter any barriers at all. He just kept absorbing the energy in the ghost yuan fruit. Time passed day by day, and Yi Shiwen swallowed the ghost yuan fruit one by one. After a full 10 days, Yi Shiwen pinched a seal with both hands, and the waves of energy surrounding his body instantly calmed down. For a full 10 days, he swallowed a ghost yuan fruit every day and finally pushed his cultivation to the peak of the middle stage of the sage plane. But it was not so easy to go further. It was just that it was much easier to take this step and enter the late stage of the sage plane. But at the same time, his power was stuck at the peak of the sage plane, and he could be said to be the strongest below the tidal king plane. If it was just a step up in the level, and he could not go further in his power, it would be meaningless. Every increase in the level was a rare experience, and he did not want to waste it. He even had an ambition. If he could increase his power to the undying king plane in one go, it would be a shocking scene. But even so, it was not something that Yi Shiwen could improve in a short time. He could only put this idea aside for now. He would have time to test it out after all these things were over. The titled king plane was a level, and it was also a watershed. Once one crossed the titled king plane, one would be a top-notch figure in the world, and their words carried weight in all the realms. As long as the Emperor King didn't appear, no one in the king-ranked realm would be able to control them. They were practically invincible. Once he could break through this limit, he would become the 8th major figure in the Hidden Valley. He would no longer be an insignificant figure. But he knew that this path was undoubtedly much more difficult than breaking through from the peak of the Sage Plane to the Titled King Plane. But even so, it was faster than cultivating to the peak of the Sage Plane and then trying to break through to the Titled King Plane, and it was much easier. So, Yi Shiwen chose this path in the end. 10 days have passed. The red-robed old freak should have arrived by now. If I want to break through to the king-ranked realm in one go, I will not be able to do it with ordinary methods. I can only make use of the power of this king-ranked elixir. I have to get my hands on this king-ranked elixir. Yi Shiwen narrowed his eyes and was extremely determined. If it were not for the titled king pill, he would never have chosen this path that seemed to have no chance of success. It was simply crazy. This was his only chance. Swoosh! The wings of wind and thunder spread out behind him, and he instantly turned into a ball of wind and thunder and flew out. He had only flown less than 100,000 miles when he saw shattered space everywhere, and there were people fighting fiercely. He took a closer look and found that they were all acquaintances. On one side was the middle-aged swordsman who had been chasing Yi Shiwen relentlessly. On the other side was Shuel Yin and the others. They were really old acquaintances. Shuel Yin was here to track the blood curse in Yi Shiwen's body, and the middle-aged swordsman was also searching bit by bit, extremely persistent. However, it was a pity that neither side could find Yi Shiwen, and they collided on the spot. Shuel Yin and the others did not want to fight with the middle-aged swordsman, but the middle-aged swordsman did not think so much. He was already crazy and simply treated Shuel Yin and the others as his opponents and attacked. Although Shuel Yin and the others had the advantage in numbers, their cultivation was not much different from that of the red-robed old monster, but they were only at the peak of the sage realm. On the other hand, the middle-aged swordsman was comparable to those monstrous geniuses. Although he had lost his mind and could not exert his combat strength to the extreme, he alone was enough to make Shuel Yin and the others suffer greatly and constantly retreat. It was just one man and one sword, but they had the power to shatter the world, which amazed the onlookers. Damn it, how do we meet him? Isn't that the extreme path sword saint from more than 500,000 years ago? The blood celestial horse could not help but roar. So many of them had joined forces, but they were still defeated by the middle-aged swordsman. If word of this got out, they would lose all face. But there was nothing they could do. At this moment, they were actually a little glad. If this extreme path sword saint was still at his peak hundreds of thousands of years ago and had not even lost his mind, they would have been killed by now. The difference between an ordinary peak of the sage realm and an existence of that level was like heaven and earth. Even when these people faced king-rank martial artists, they were not completely defenseless. They were truly perverted. Damn beast, I can't believe we met this guy. Wasn't it rumored that he had fallen in the gloomy sky ghost palace hundreds of thousands of years ago? Why did he suddenly appear at this time? Shuel Yin could not help but be extremely angry. He was about to catch up with Yi Shiwen, and according to his senses, they were only a few 100,000 miles away. Who would have thought that they would encounter such a madman, who treated them as enemies and attacked them crazily? Now, the search for Yi Shiwen and the ghost Yuan tree was completely ruined. There was no need to even think about it. They did not know that the ghost Yuan tree had been taken away by Yi Shiwen, and now the place where the ghost Yuan tree had been was far from where they were. If they knew, they would probably die of anger. Compared to the anger and helplessness of Shuel Yin and the others, the middle-aged swordsman situation was much simpler. He just kept muttering kill, 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 kill like a mindless killing machine. In his mind, it seemed that killing was the only option. His eyes were bloodshot, and the world he saw was also scarlet. This is a little interesting. Yi Shiwen slightly sneered. If he had encountered these two groups of people in the past, then perhaps it would have been a big problem. But now, he could calmly sit on the sidelines and watch the fight between the two sides. Even if one of them won, it did not matter to him. He also wanted to see how strong he had become after his skills improved. Chapter 26:26. Whether it was the middle-aged swordsman's side or Shuel Yin's side, for Yi Shiwen, they were both scourges. Both sides were here for him, so no matter who won or lost, he would not let them go. He did not make a move now because he was waiting for the winner to be decided. The fluctuations of the laws in the sky turned into monstrous divine light that swept in all directions. From afar, the collision of the seven-colored divine light looked extremely dazzling. But in reality, the people who were really fighting did not dare to relax for even a moment. All kinds of divine kingdoms spread out in the sky and collided with each other. The scene was extremely spectacular, as if many worlds had collided together, and the violent fluctuations of power made people shudder. In particular, everyone's cultivation level was actually similar. In such a battle, one could not relax for even a moment, or they would be the ones to die. Even Yi Shiwen, who was hiding and watching from the side, could feel the violent fluctuations in the secondary space caused by the experts at the peak of the Sage Plane. Such a battle could almost be said to be the strongest battle under the king-ranked realm. The battle was still going on, but it was clear that the middle-aged swordsman side had begun to gain the upper hand, because the middle-aged swordsman did not have any subjective thoughts at all. He only had one thought: kill, kill, kill. Compared to Yi Shiwen, the strength of Shuai Yin and the others was really far inferior. There was no comparison at all. If it were not for the fact that there were more people, they would have already been defeated by the middle-aged swordsman. But even so, such a battle could not last for long. The first one to die appeared, and it was the extremely rare blood sky horse. It constantly spat out blood-colored light and attacked the middle-aged swordsman. But the middle-aged swordsman appeared in a flash and smashed the sword kingdom down, crushing the blood sky horse's divine kingdom and piercing through its body, causing it to explode on the spot. The blood sky horse could not even block a single sword attack, which completely shocked Shuai Yin and the others. They never thought that the middle-aged swordsman would be so terrifying, which completely subverted their understanding. Damn it, is the gap really that big? Shuai Yin kept roaring. They were both at the peak of the sage realm, but the gap between their strength was so big that it was like heaven and earth. I'm leaving. I don't want to stay and be killed by this madman. The red-scaled monster flapped its huge wings and directly turned to escape. All of its confidence had been completely shattered. Compared to such an ancient monster, they seemed to be a bit weaker. Pucci! However, before it could escape, the middle-aged swordsman brandished his sword and sliced the huge body of the red-scaled monster into two. At his level of cultivation, his senses were already unimaginably sharp. He was able to capture such a small opportunity. No, we can't escape. We can only fight him head-on. If we try to escape, we won't have any strength left to face this guy and can only be defeated one by this madman. Do you want to end up like them? Shuai Yin roared as he turned to the remaining two. Let's go all out. I'm going to die anyway. Even if I die, I'll make sure he's buried with me. The great fiend roared furiously. That's right, we're also people of great clans outside. How can we show weakness in front of this lunatic? The experts of the sea race had also gone completely crazy. The three immediately made up their minds to fight this madman to the end. Apart from this, there was no other way. The death of the red-scaled monster told them that turning around and running away was simply not an option. Although there were only 3 people left, the 3 of them joined forces and managed to stabilize the situation. At this time, the 3 of them were fighting the middle-aged swordsman with the determination to die. Working together, the 3 of them were in a much better position than the 5 of them, who each had their own ulterior motives. Boom! 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 An even more intense battle unfolded. Under the relentless attacks of the 3 people, even the middle-aged swordsman who had rushed and had obvious wounds on his body. The great fiend had seized the opportunity to claw out 5 huge gashes on his chest, but he was completely unaware of it. After all, the middle-aged swordsman did not have the slightest bit of consciousness and only knew how to kill. If he was sober, he would not have exposed such a weakness. Seeing that the middle-aged swordsman had seized the opportunity to injure him, the 3 of them immediately felt that there was a lot of hope. As long as this situation continued, it was hard to say who would emerge as the final victor. Although they would have to pay a painful price in the end, it was not like there was no hope at all. Yi Shiwen watched from the side. Although the middle-aged swordsman only had the instinct to kill, it was precisely because of this that his swordsmanship became even more exquisite. This gave Yi Shiwen a lot of inspiration. After all, swordsmanship was one of the most important paths in Yi Shiwen's martial arts. At this moment, the situation suddenly changed. The spear in the hands of the powerful great fiend had unexpectedly pierced through the vast sky and instantly appeared in the chest of the middle-aged swordsman, catching him off guard. The spear had directly pierced through the middle-aged swordsman's body. "Ha ha ha, die, you madman!" The great fiend revealed a malevolent smile and burst out with sharp laughter. However, before he could be proud of himself, the great fiend collapsed on the spot. His malevolent smile froze on his face. It turned out that at the same time, the swordsman's sword light had also pierced through his body. The terrible sword light exploded in his body, thoroughly killing the great fiend. "You madman! You should have gone to hell long ago." At this moment, the sea race member had completely gone crazy. Another of his companions had been killed, and his psychological defenses had completely collapsed. Ever since he had proven his Tao, and especially since he had reached his current level of cultivation, it had been a long time since he had encountered such a danger. In fact, he could not even find that kind of feeling anymore. However, this was a madman who simply did not know how to reason. He could only go all out. Above his head, a huge bead flew up and set off a shocking frenzy that completely submerged the middle-aged swordsman. Kill! The middle-aged swordsman completely erupted. With a loud roar, the sword light tore through the endless seawater and slashed into the body of the sea race member. At this moment, bloody holes appeared all over the middle-aged swordsman's body. It turned out that the seawater contained countless poisonous needles that had pierced through his body. This was an extremely vicious method of attack. "It's my turn, you damn madman. This time, I'll send you to hell." Shuai Yin roared, and a blood-colored flag appeared in his hand. An astonishing blood-red light shot out from it, and the middle-aged swordsman had no time to dodge before he was struck by the blood-red light, his body melting in the air. After suffering heavy injuries from the previous few people, no matter how strong the middle-aged swordsman was, he had finally slipped up and revealed a fatal flaw, allowing Shuai Yin to strike him. However, Shuai Yin did not have an easy time either. Although he had killed the middle-aged swordsman with a single blow, the middle-aged swordsman's final sword chi had also struck him, severely injuring him and causing most of his body to explode. Shuai Yin's face showed a somewhat ferocious smile. "Ha ha ha ha! The final winner will be me." Half of his body had exploded, and although he looked extremely miserable, he had at least managed to preserve his life. All that was left was for him to slowly recover. "The final winner?" Yi Shiwen's cold voice rang out. "Who?" Shuai Yin was shocked. Someone had actually managed to get so close to him without him noticing, and when he saw the figure walking out of the void, he was completely shocked. "It's actually you?" That's right, this person was Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen, who had been watching the show from the sidelines for a long time, was finally going to take action. From beginning to end, Shuai Yin had not been able to discover Yi Shiwen's whereabouts. Not to mention that he had been in a fierce battle just now. Even if there was no battle and his vigilance was at its highest, it would still have been impossible for him to discover Yi Shiwen's current ambush. "You were actually lurking around?" "Impossible. You have my blood-refining sex blood curse in your body. If you had approached, it would have been impossible for me to not notice you." Shuai Yin said in surprise. "Do you think I wouldn't have noticed your blood curse? It was just a way to lure you over. That's why I turned a blind eye to it." Yi Shiwen said coldly. "You?" Shuai Yin was shocked. He never expected that the method he was so proud of was actually in Yi Shiwen's hands. It was all because Yi Shiwen was too lazy to deal with him, not because of how clever his method was. Sure enough, no matter how hard he tried, he could not perceive the existence of the blood curse. Yi Shiwen had already removed the blood curse when he was watching the show just now, and now there was no longer any need to keep the blood curse. In an instant, Shuai Yin felt that Yi Shiwen was even more terrifying than the middle-aged swordsman just now. Suddenly, a burst of astonishing blood-red light burst out from his body, covering the sky as Shuai Yin frantically fled into the distance. Even at his peak, he didn't have much confidence in defeating Yi Shiwen. Otherwise, he wouldn't have bothered to expose the ghost origin fruit and summon other helpers, not to mention that he was now half-crippled by the middle-aged swordsman, so it was impossible for him to be Yi Shiwen's opponent. Xiao! Shuai Yin flew tens of thousands of kilometers in an instant, not even daring to look back. If he had looked back even a little, he would have seen a ball of wind and thunder flying towards him at an even more astonishing speed, accompanied by a shocking sword intent. Pucci! The sword intent directly cut into Shuai Yin's body, and he didn't even have time to scream before he was directly beheaded. Subsequently, Yi Shiwen's figure appeared in the void, his expression extremely indifferent. Having killed two powerful enemies, he was in a good mood. After collecting the wealth of these people, he flew into the distance. Chapter 26-27. It was a place of extreme energy. Cold winds were constantly blowing everywhere, making it difficult for people to get close to it. Roar! 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 Loud ghost roars were constantly coming out of it, making it difficult for people to figure out how many malicious ghosts were inside. It's already one day past the scheduled time. Why hasn't the deadly scholar arrived yet? At the edge of the place of extreme energy, the metal-eating ant swallowed a malicious ghost that had appeared out of nowhere. The sound of crunching and crunching made people shudder. It was as if the metal-eating ant was chewing on some kind of ghost meat. Among these people, the metal-eating ant was the most impatient. Not far from him, the water and fire flood dragons, as well as the red-robed old monster, had already arrived. Could he have gotten lost? The fire flood dragon pouted and couldn't help but say, "I don't think so. I've already given him the map. So, as long as he follows my map and doesn't go too far, there shouldn't be any problem." The red-robed old monster frowned slightly, but there was a hint of uncertainty in his tone. After all, the map he had given him only included most of the places in the gloomy sky ghost palace. If he had been teleported to a further place, then he might not have been able to find his way and would have gotten lost. If Yi Shiwen was missing, then many of their plans would become even more troublesome. After all, it was not easy to find such an expert. If he has gotten lost, then what's the point of continuing to wait? The water flood dragon said in a hot-tempered manner. After all, the gloomy sky ghost palace was only open for a limited time. The king's elixir was very important, but the good things in the gloomy sky ghost palace were not limited to just a few. If they were to waste too much time here, then they wouldn't have time to look for other good things later on. Then, the gains wouldn't make up for the losses. Red-robed old monster, just give me an answer. If this deadly scholar still doesn't come, then are you going to continue to wait? The metal-eating ant transformed into a stream of light and flew over as he said. His brilliant golden light was extremely dazzling in this place of extreme constantly attracting malicious spirits to charge over. Even though they knew they were no match for him, they still couldn't resist their desire for blood and chi. They charged over wave after wave, only to be devoured by the metal-eating ants. A helpless smile appeared on the red-robed old freak's face. Seeing that they were already a little impatient, he could only say, "Then let's wait for another half a day. If he still hasn't arrived in half a day, then we'll leave first." He was also a little impatient in his heart, although Yi Shiwen was a rare talent, but he couldn't delay important matters for his sake. "There's no need to wait for half a day. I'm coming." A clear voice came from afar, but a green voice broke through the air. Several people suddenly became serious. Yi Shiwen's figure landed on the ground. Several people had a serious look on their faces, as if they hadn't talked about Yi Shiwen behind his back. Yi Shiwen didn't care about this and acted as if he hadn't heard anything. He said directly, "Sorry, there was a small problem, so I'm late." In fact, he had originally been able to make it in time. However, he later realized that when he was avoiding the middle-aged swordsman, he had already run off in the wrong direction. As a result, it took him some time to finally find his original path. Otherwise, he would have made it directly. "It's all right. Although I'm a little late, I still made it in time," the red-robed old monster said. "All right, since we're all here, let's not wait anymore. Let's go." The metal-eating ant stepped forward and said, "All right, let's go." The water and fire dragons were the first to lose their patience. They transformed into two streams of light, water and fire, and rushed out into this place of extreme Yi Shiwen didn't say much and hurriedly followed them. As soon as these powerful experts at the peak of the sage realm rushed into this place of extreme they set off shocking waves. Powerful malicious ghosts constantly gathered. The closer they got to the inside of this place of extreme the stronger the malicious ghosts they encountered. If the gloomy sky ghost palace was already considered a place of extreme in the eyes of outsiders, then this place was almost one of the darkest places in the entire gloomy sky ghost palace. It was dark to the extreme. Be careful. Everyone went all the way to the deepest part of the place of extreme Suddenly, Yi Shiwen gave a warning. Everyone was shocked. They all looked over, only to see a terrifying evil wind blowing in front of them. The black storm was endless, almost swallowing everything. That was a dangerous place. Everyone be careful. We've entered the core area. We'll be able to find the heart-devouring thousand ghost grass in a short distance. However, the malicious ghosts here are much more powerful than in other places. There may even be a ghost king. Everyone be careful. The red-robed old monster hurriedly reminded. There was no need for the red-robed old monster to remind them. In front of them, a huge monster had already appeared. It was not a malicious ghost, but a zombie. It was a violent ape zombie covered with long green hair. No one knew what kind of violent ape had turned into a zombie after it died. This violent ape was at least 30 meters tall. It was its real body. It was black all over, but covered with green hair. Its eyes were extremely fierce. Corpse ape. Everyone couldn't help but gasp. This was not just a simple corpse ape. It was an existence that had reached the peak of the sage realm. Facing an existence of the same level, even the red-robed old monster and the others did not dare to underestimate it. The water and fire dragons were the first to attack. As soon as they attacked, the power of water and fire filled the sky, rolling into a terrible storm and blasting towards the corpse ape. The others also made their moves one after another, not daring to stop at all. If the warning given by the red-robed old monster had been nothing more than alarmist talk, then they had encountered a corpse ape at the pinnacle of the sage plain right from the start, which made them have no choice but to be cautious. The metal-eating ant turned into a golden-bodied man on the spot. He immediately conjured two huge golden hammers, which smashed towards the corpse ape. The hammers were made from his two huge pincers, which were extremely powerful life ritual implements. The red-robed old monster's actions were not slow at all. He turned his palm and conjured a sword, which turned into a sword net in the sky and fell down, shrouding the corpse ape. Although it was the first time that everyone had worked together, and there was no tacit understanding to speak of, but the many treasures and means they had made the whole attack look extremely shocking. The violent ape saw that everyone was attacking, and its eyes flashed fiercely. The green corpse hair all over its body suddenly stood up, appearing in front of it like a forest. Rumble! A violent collision sound was heard, and everyone's attacks all landed on the corpse hair of the violent ape. The corpse hair of the corpse ape was very strong, and it must have specially cultivated the Vajra body when it was alive. But now, it was even more tyrannical than before, coupled with the incomparably strong body of the zombie. Everyone was actually unable to do anything to the corpse ape for a while. Everyone, hurry up. If we can't get rid of this guy soon, I'm afraid it will soon attract other ghosts. There is more than this powerful corpse ape here. The red-robed old monster reminded loudly, but in reality, there was no need for him to remind them. Everyone was already doing their best. They were all veterans, so there was no need for the red-robed old monster to remind them. Yishuan's swordlight also chopped down along with everyone's offensive. The power of thunder transformed into a treasured sword and chopped off half of the growing green corpse hairs. However, it still couldn't cut through the green corpse hairs. Although the corpse ape howled in pain, it still couldn't seriously injure it. The corpse ape looked at Yishuan, and suddenly there was incomparable fear in its eyes. Among the attacks of these people, only Yishuan could hurt it, and the others could not even hurt its skin. Undoubtedly, it also regarded Yishuan as the biggest threat. The others also looked at Yishuan with some surprise. The power of thunder was known as the nemesis of all the Een and evil forces in the world, and this zombie belonged to the Een and evil forces. However, this effect was truly too heaven-defying in the case where the realm of thunder was almost the same. Little did they know that at this time, Yishuan was also a little surprised. He did not use his full strength at all in that sword attack just now, only less than 30% of his power. But even so, ordinary warriors, even those at the peak of the sage realm, would probably be seriously injured by him. But this corpse ape only screamed after being cut by him. Zombies were indeed an extremely terrifying race. In the same realm, They could fight and kill all races in the world. A top-notch drought demon could even challenge a Kinkenford realm formidable martial artist. What's more, when one cultivated to that level, the power of extreme een and evil was nothing. That was because it was already close to the Tao. When all martial arts reached the end of their cultivation, they would be close to the same. At that time, the power that could restrain them would be very small. Just one was enough to stir up the world and change the situation. In this short period of time, he sensed many tyrannical divine wills sweeping over from the surroundings. Many tyrannical auras were rushing over. If this continued, they would most likely be surrounded by these monsters. In other places, such a tyrannical corpse ape would already be a strong master of a region. But in this place, known as the Hall of 10,000 Ghosts, it was nothing, and there might even be creatures of the Ghost King realm. Even Yi Shiwen was a little nervous. The perception of the others was not as strong as Yi Shiwen, but soon they also sensed that many powerful ghosts were rushing over, and their faces all changed. Damn, when I came last time, there were clearly not so many monsters. Could it be that it is because the heart-biting grass of 10,000 ghosts has matured that these beasts have been attracted here? The red-robed old monster secretly roared. Let me lead the way. Chapter 26-28. Let me lead the way. Yi Shiwen suddenly stepped forward when everyone was still thinking that the corpse ape was very tricky to deal with. Dear deadly scholar, the thunder technique that you practice has a very good restraining effect on these een and evil creatures. I'll leave it to you. The red-robed old monster quickly said. The others didn't say anything at this time. After all, there was nothing else to say in such a critical situation. In their opinion, Yi Shiwen's thunder technique was the best restraint on these een and evil creatures. There was nothing better than this. The look in the eyes of the corpse ape changed as soon as it saw Yi Shiwen. He could feel that Yi Shiwen was extraordinary when he had seen Yi Shiwen's attack a moment ago. He knew that Yi Shiwen was by no means an ordinary warrior. Yi Shiwen grasped the void. Suddenly, endless thunder energy condensed and turned into a sea of thunder and lightning. It seemed as if they had entered a kingdom of thunder and lightning. Yi Shiwen seemed to have incarnated into the god of thunder. What a strong thunder energy. In this een and evil place, all the firm and fierce laws will be greatly suppressed. However, he can actually gather such a level of thunder energy in this place. His martial power is really deep and unimaginable. The red-robed old monster and the others couldn't help but gasp when they saw that Yi Shiwen was able to condense such a huge amount of thunder energy. They knew very well how difficult it was to condense such thunder energy in this place. A murderous intention flashed in the eyes of the corpse ape in front of Yi Shiwen. Suddenly, it opened its mouth and spurted out corpse fire, which turned into a sea of fire which swept towards Yi Shiwen. It wanted to make the first move and gain the upper hand. It wanted to burn Yi Shiwen alive first. The corpse fire was very sharp, especially in such an environment. It was a boundless bonus, and even the invisible laws were sizzling from the heat. This beast is so arrogant. Break for me, Yi Shiwen shouted. The thunder energy in his hand turned into a thunder blade and chopped down. Crash! After an astonishing collision, the thunder blade in Yi Shiwen's hand directly split open the corpse fire, setting off a startling frenzy and even blowing away the corpse fire. The thunder blade's momentum didn't diminish, and it directly chopped the corpse ape's body. Moreover, the thunder blade became stronger and stronger. It expanded with the wind, and its power continued to increase. How is this possible? How can it grow to such an extent after being struck out? Seeing this scene, the red-robed old freak and the others were shocked. They did not dare to imagine it. Compared to the previous blow, the power that erupted from Yi Shiwen now was not just a little bit stronger. Could it be that he had not used his full strength before? Thinking of this, these people had mixed feelings in their hearts. They were also incomparably afraid of Yi Shiwen. Originally, everyone's strength was similar to each other. So, they naturally weren't afraid of someone playing tricks on them. However, Yi Shiwen's strength had completely surpassed everyone's. This had brought enormous pressure to them. The eyes of that corpse ape were filled with incomparable horror because he was facing Yi Shiwen's attack head-on. So, he could feel an overwhelming destructive power coming towards him. Even a normal world would be completely destroyed by this attack. He directly roared, and a treasured armor suddenly appeared on his body. No one knew which era this treasured armor was from. It was rusty and had some dents on its surface, and there was a lot of blood in the center of the dents. It was unknown how many years this blood had existed, but it still contained a formidable power. It seemed as if it was immortal. Bang! The thunderblade and the treasured armor directly collided, and a formidable power burst out. However, the fierce collision was still going on. Bang! After a long time, the thunderblade tilted and continued to chop down. At the same time, the treasured armor was shattered. Then, the thunderblade still had enough power to chop down. It fiercely chopped down on the corpse ape's body and brought out innumerable green corpse blood. Roar! The corpse ape didn't have any intention of going berserk at this time. He was genuinely afraid. Yi Shiwen's attack had completely destroyed his confidence. He was not a human, but a monster. He had never encountered such a terrifying existence before. At this time, the others also looked at Yi Shiwen with their mouths agape. It was too outrageous that a thunderblade condensed from laws could break a top-grade divine treasure armor. It was simply breaking a top-grade divine treasure with the power of his bare hands. If everyone was really so powerful, then why would there be any need for sacrificial offerings to divine treasures? Wouldn't they be invincible in the world with their bare hands? Damn, this is too fake. The metal-eating ant had to admit that he was convinced. He had always relied on his special bloodline to look down on all the heroes in the world. However, now that he had seen Yi Shiwen's tyrannical strength, he had to admit that if there were really monsters in this world, Yi Shiwen would definitely be one of them. In fact, they even faintly guessed that Yi Shiwen had already touched the level of those legendary evildoers or old antiques. If that was the case, it was really too terrifying. They still didn't know that Yi Shiwen was now not even in the late stage of the Sage Realm. Otherwise, they might really be defeated. Since he had decided to kill his way out, Yi Shiwen would not hold back anymore. There was no point in hiding now. The most important thing was to find the 1,000-ghost heart-devouring grass as soon as possible. Seeing that the corpse ape wanted to escape, Yi Shiwen would not give it such a chance. He immediately stepped out and shouted, "Beast, where are you going?" The thunder blade in his hand soared against the wind and turned into a giant blade thousands of feet long. It slashed down like a mountain. Ah! The corpse ape could not dodge at all. It was directly slashed by Yi Shiwen. Its body was torn apart and exploded. Blood splashed out, and flesh and blood flew everywhere. Yi Shiwen flew out of the demon-calling banner. After swallowing all the flesh and blood, he directly took the lead and flew out. Let's go quickly. Don't waste time." At this time, everyone was like waking up from a dream. They completely recovered from the shock that Yi Shiwen had given them and hurriedly followed. Although Yi Shiwen's sudden surge in strength had increased a lot of pressure on them, under such an environment, the stronger Yi Shiwen's strength was, the more likely they were to succeed. Naturally, they were happy to do so. Yi Shiwen led the way and took the lead. He drew a kingdom of thunder, and the power of extreme yang swept across. Ordinary ghosts did not dare to come close at all, or they would only die. On the contrary, it was a little less troublesome. However, some horrible ghosts, zombies, and other ghosts frequently appeared. At this time, Yi Shiwen's exquisite cultivation in the thunder method was fully reflected. Even powerful, vengeful ghosts at the pinnacle of the sage plane were unable to hold them off for long. They were defeated almost as easily as crushing dry weeds. While the thunder technique could completely restrain these and evil monsters, Yi Shiwen's powers were naturally far above those at the pinnacle of the sage plane to be able to fight to this extent, making him comparable to those monsters. If they still could not see this by now, they would have been in vain. There were both advantages and disadvantages. At the very least, under Yi Shiwen's lead, many powerful ghosts surrounded them, but they were unable to truly threaten them. It should be said that there were very few ghosts that could withstand more than a few moves from Yi Shiwen. It was a completely one-sided battle. This was also a complete eye-opener for them, and they could not help but be a little more cautious. When they returned, they had to look into the background of this deadly scholar. Such a powerful master was not to be trifled with, and it was impossible for him to appear out of nowhere. He must have some background. Yi Shiwen's thunder blade chopped another ghost at the pinnacle of the sage plane into nothingness. Its divinity and flesh were mostly devoured by the demon-summoning banner. Before them, a small island appeared. In this space of nothingness, the small island seemed very out of place. "It's here!" The red-robed old monster had a somewhat joyful smile on his face. "The last time I came here, I saw the heart-biting grass of 10,000 ghosts here." He finally calmed down. This time, it was much more dangerous than before. The last time he came, he only encountered a ghost at the pinnacle of the sage plain in the innermost part of the island. After a fierce battle, he successfully retreated. This time, however, along the way, he had encountered dozens of powerful ghosts. The situation was completely different. He could only guess that it was because the heart-biting grass of 10,000 ghosts had matured. Although the red-robed old monster said so, no one dared to act rashly. They all looked at Yi Shiwen. After fighting along the way, although they were unwilling to admit it, in fact, they had indeed regarded Yi Shiwen as the core of the entire team. The team was led by the red-robed old monster, but unknowingly, the core had already shifted to Yi Shiwen. Even the red-robed old monster had to admit this, and there was nothing he could do about it. After all, the rule of this world was that the strong were respected. Fortunately, Yi Shiwen did not act too arrogant, which made the red-robed old monster breathe a sigh of relief. "Come, let's go up and have a look." Yi Shiwen saw that everyone was looking at him, and said without hesitation. He led the way, and everyone followed. Nobody knew when it started, but they had already gotten used to such a configuration. Yi Shiwen was the first to arrive on the island. As soon as he stepped on the island, a cold power immediately leaped up from the soles of his feet. It took a long time for him to suppress it with the power of thunder. The others were in a much worse state than Yi Shiwen. They were sent flying with screams, and there was even a kind of fire burning on their feet. It took them a long time to suppress it with their power, and they still looked a little frightened. Chapter 26-29. It was ridiculously strong. They did not have Yi Shiwen's terrifying skills to suppress it. Everyone turned to look at the red-robed freak. Why didn't he say so earlier? The red-robed freak could not help but laugh bitterly and say, "The last time I was here, it was not like this. Furthermore, I was in a hurry and did not have time to take a look." Yi Shiwen sensed carefully, and his expression changed. "Not good. This is a god nation. We have stepped into someone else's god nation." "What? How can it be a god nation? If there was a god nation, we would have reacted immediately," the fire flood dragon exclaimed. No one wanted to believe it. It was impossible that they did not sense a god nation at all. "That's right, that can't be. It must be something like a barrier. Otherwise, why do we not sense anything?" The water flood dragon frowned. "But what if it is a king-ranked realm martial artist god nation?" Yi Shiwen said with a dignified expression. Everyone's expressions changed. If it was just an ordinary god nation, no matter how scary it would not be a big deal. After all, they were already at the peak of the top martial artists in the 10,000 domains. Only king-ranked martial artists were above them. Furthermore, based on Yi Shiwen's performance just now, he seemed to be comparable to those demon-level martial artists and old antiques. They did not have to worry about any danger. However, there was only one possibility that they could not do anything about it: a king-ranked martial artist. That was a creature of another realm that was completely above them. No one knew better than them how scary a king-ranked martial artist was. Although they were the closest group to this level, it was also because of this that they understood the difference between themselves and a king-ranked martial artist. Even if a king-ranked martial artist had just entered the king-ranked realm, they would not be able to deal with him. They were king-rank martial artists and had the ability to rule the world. Life-stealing scholar, you're not joking, are you? The metal-eating ant's voice was cold and even a little fearful. At his level, he understood how scary a king-ranked martial artist was. If they were not careful, they would all die here. I am not joking. This is a king-ranked martial artist's god nation. Yi Shiwen's expression was very serious. Although he had never fought with a king-ranked martial artist before, some things did not require personal experience. It can't be. At that moment, everyone's legs turned to jelly. In this world, only a king-ranked martial artist could make their legs turn to jelly just by hearing his name. However, they knew that Yi Shiwen would not lie. At least he would not lie about this. There was no benefit to it. That meant that there could really be a powerful king-ranked realm martial artist here. What should we do? The water flood dragon was a little flustered. On one hand, it wanted to find the 10,000 ghost heart-devouring grass. On the other hand, it was afraid of alerting the king-ranked martial artists inside. Everyone looked at Yi Shiwen one after another to see how he would choose. At this time, Yi Shiwen had already become the core of everyone, whether they were willing or not. It was the same. I definitely don't want to give up just like that. After all, this concerns whether I can become a king-ranked martial artist in the future. What about you guys? Yi Shiwen turned to ask them. The king-ranked elixir was too important to Yi Shiwen. Without the king-ranked elixir, he would not be able to break through to the king-ranked realm while he was still in the later stages of the sage realm. It would just be a delusion. Therefore, he could not give up. He could not give up. All right, since Life-Stealing Scholar is willing to give it a try, I have nothing else to say. The red-robed old monster gritted his teeth and said. He knew very well that if he missed this opportunity, he might not be able to break through to the king-ranked realm in this lifetime. If there were really king-ranked ghosts here, unless he could get a king-ranked martial artist to help him, there was no way he could get the 10,000 ghost heart-devouring grass. Following Yi Shiwen this time would give him a better chance. That was because he knew that there was no way he could get a truly powerful king-ranked martial artist to help him. If he missed this opportunity, he might never get another chance. How could he be willing to be stuck at the pinnacle of the sage realm forever? Although he might not be able to break through to the king-ranked realm with the king-ranked elixir, it would be much better than what he was now. Seeing that the two most important people had agreed, the others could not help but hesitate. If they did not agree, they might miss this opportunity. However, if they agreed, they might die. I'm not going to play with you guys. Even if I can never break through to the king-ranked realm, it's better than dying here. The metal-eating ant finally decided to give up. I'm sorry. I don't want to die here. After saying that, the metal-eating ant immediately turned into a ball of golden light and disappeared without a trace. He was also decisive and did not stay, afraid that the king-ranked martial artist would appear. The remaining water and fire flood dragons looked at each other. Then, the water flood dragon said, "The two of us have decided to stay and fight." Just as Brother Red Robe said, if we miss this opportunity, we might never get another chance to be king-ranked. All right, if that's the case, let's go. Although this is the god nation of a king-ranked martial artist, I think there must be some places that we don't know. Otherwise, given how powerful the king-ranked martial artist is, we would have been discovered the moment we got close. Yi Shiwen said comfortingly. Hearing Yi Shiwen say this, everyone could not help but feel a little relieved. They could not help but look at Yi Shiwen strangely. Why didn't he say this earlier? Why did he only say it now that the metal-eating ant had left? The water and fire flood dragons were especially glad that they had not made the wrong choice. Otherwise, they would not even have had a chance now. Everyone, raise your defenses. Try to be fast. Although I don't know why the king-ranked martial artist did not attack us immediately, we should still move faster. After Yi Shiwen said this, he raised his thunder armor and rushed forward. The rest of them followed suit and headed deeper into the island. Roar! The closer they got, the more they could hear the roars of many ghosts, which made them shudder. What's going on? Why do I feel that there are more and more powerful malicious ghosts gathering here? At this moment, the red-robed old freak felt cold sweat dripping down his forehead. He clearly felt that many tyrannical malicious ghosts had gathered here. If Yi Shiwen hadn't concealed everyone's aura at the critical moment, they would have been discovered by a malicious ghost flying past them. It turned out to be another malicious ghost at the peak of the Sage Realm. The further they went, the more malicious ghosts they could sense. They were so densely packed that everyone could feel chills running down their spines. If not for Yi Shiwen's concealment, they would have been discovered long ago. They would not have been able to get so deep into the island. When they looked at Yi Shiwen, the look in their eyes became even more complicated. Not only was Yi Shiwen's strength tyrannical, but his concealment skill was also ridiculously strong. Even at such a close distance, he was unexpectedly not discovered by that malicious ghost. The other malicious ghosts also did not discover him. This was simply a miracle. Was there anything that he could not do? It was precisely because of this that they were in the mood to continue. However, when they continued, the red-robed old man was so scared that he almost knelt down. It turned out that in the distance, there was actually a ghost king that was thousands of meters long. It had a green face and sharp fangs, and its entire body was black. Its entire body was emitting a boundless haze, and countless laws had turned into malicious ghosts that were singing praises of eternal existence. Although it was extremely mean and evil, it gave off a feeling that it was just an honorable. This was the feeling of cultivating the way of ghosts to the extreme. It was incomparable. However, this ghost king lay there quietly and did not move at all. It was as if it was immersed in the scene. Around it, hundreds of powerful ghosts at the peak of the Sage Realm were worshipping it with their subordinates, chanting some ancient scripture. They could not understand it, but it had the sharpness of the way of ghosts. The center of the island was densely packed, and there were tens of thousands of malicious ghosts. They were all existences above the way proving realm, and it was enough to make one's scalp go numb. Damn, this is the night of 10,000 ghosts. The fire dragon could not help but exclaim. This ghost king seems to be in a deep sleep. It can't be that it has suddenly woken up. Everyone's eyelids twitched. If this ghost king were to wake up, they could only flee. Even if they fled, they might not be able to escape. It probably hasn't woken up yet. These ghosts are probably carrying out some kind of ritual to awaken this ghost king. Yi Shiwen said with a serious expression. Everyone became even more anxious. They could feel that the aura of this ghost king was gradually increasing. If it were to wake up, what would happen? However, what made it even more difficult was that they had already seen the 10,000 ghost heart devouring grass floating in the center of the ghosts. There were many of them, but they were all surrounded by the ghosts. If they retreated now, they might be safe. However, they would lose the opportunity to enter the king-ranked realm. If they went in, they would definitely alarm many ghosts. If that happened, they would really die. No wonder so many ghosts have gathered here. It turns out that they are trying to awaken this ghost king. D***M. What should we do? The red-robed old monster could not help but roar to himself. However, he was already thinking of retreating. Anyone who saw so many ghosts would feel their heart pounding and their legs turning to jelly. We are already here. Do you still want to give up? Yi Shiwen said through gritted teeth. With so many malicious ghosts, even he felt that it was difficult to deal with them. If you want to leave, it's still not too late. However, I have to get the 10,000 ghost heart-devouring grass. Chapter 2630. Yi Shiwen could feel that the slumbering ghost king was growing stronger day by day. It was getting stronger and stronger with every passing minute and second. It was awakening. These tens of thousands of ghosts seemed to be using some strange, sacrificial ritual to awaken this ghost king and restore its strength. He had to snatch the 10,000 ghost heart-devouring grass before this ghost king awakened. Otherwise, with his strength, it would be impossible for him to snatch the 10,000 ghost heart-devouring grass from the ghost king. Since I'm already here, I plan to fight. Even if I die, I will have no regrets. If I can never break into the king-ranked realm, then what's the point of living? The red-robed old monster's eyes were bloodshot as he spoke with a crazed look. I want to stay as well. I've had enough of these days. The water dragon said coldly. Then I'll come as well. The fire dragon saw that her husband was determined to stay, so she naturally couldn't ignore him. All right, then listen to me. You guys go and alarm these ghosts first. 3 breaths. You have to hold on for 3 breaths. Then I will snatch the 10,000 ghost heart-devouring grass. If you can't hold on, then don't blame me. Yishuin said coldly as he glanced at the 3 of them. Why aren't you the one to alarm these ghosts? The fire dragon said unhappily. Because I'm the fastest. With your strength, none of you can snatch the 10,000 ghost heart-devouring grass in just a few breaths. Yishuin said coldly. The 3 of them immediately calmed down. Although Yishuin's words were very cruel, they were not wrong. Compared to Yishuin, their strength was nothing. In this place, the strongest and fastest person was undoubtedly Yishuin, who practiced thunder techniques. However, if even Yishuin couldn't do it, then they naturally wouldn't be able to snatch the 10,000 ghosts heart-devouring grass from among these tens of thousands of ghosts and deities. This was a cruel reality, but it was an unavoidable reality. If that's the case, then make your move. Remember, hold on, and you will have the hope of becoming king-rank kings. Otherwise, you know the consequences. Yishuin sneered. Even if the 3 families were unwilling, they knew that Yishuin was right. Then let's begin. Double dragon wave of water and fire. The water flood dragon and the fire flood dragon both roared and reverted to their original forms. Then, they soared into the sky, bringing with them vast fluctuations. In an instant, the tens of thousands of ghosts and deities on the island were alarmed. Perhaps they did not expect that someone would dare to barge in when there were tens of thousands of ghosts and deities present. Even if it was just tens of thousands of ghosts and deities, it was still a terrifying force. Roar! Kill them! Kill! After a moment of shock, these ghosts and deities all charged forward. At the same time, the red-robed freak finally made his move. His figure dashed out in an instant, turning into a sky full of red light that swept in all directions, attracting thousands of ghosts and deities away. Their legs had turned to jelly, but there was no other way. Yishuin waited quietly. Every second felt like a year. Although most of the ghosts and deities had been lured away, the Sage Realm ghosts and deities in the center did not move at all. They were still maintaining the ritual. No, I can't wait any longer. If I wait any longer, I won't have any more chances. He knew that be it the water and fire flood dragons or the red-robed freak, they would not be able to hold on forever. They might not be able to hold on for more than a few breaths' time. This was not the best chance, but it was the only chance. He could not wait any longer. All of his powers were unleashed in an instant. All of his martial arts incarnations were gathered together, and his training vest was revealed in an instant. It was the first time he had truly unleashed all of his powers after reaching the pinnacle of the middle stage of the Sage Plane. The demonic wings on his back spread out in an instant, and he flew towards the center of the island, grabbing at the 1,000 ghost heart-devouring grass beside the Ghost King. Whoosh! Yishuin's speed had reached the pinnacle, and he even broke the sound barrier. Boom! Terrifying power was completely released at this moment. Roar! Several Sage Realm ghosts and deities were the first to react, and they pounced at Yishuin. Bang! 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 But at that moment, Yishuin was like a terrifying weapon. It was as if they would die from a mere brush or be injured from a collision. These Sage Realm ghosts and deities were beings who could summon wind and rain in the outside world, but they could not even withstand a single blow from Yishuin. They were killed right away, their bodies exploding on the spot, and they were swallowed by the demon-summoning flag. How dare you? A ghost at the pinnacle of the Sage Realm stood up and clawed at Yishuin. The terrifying claw force shattered the sky, and ghostly flames surged, covering Yishuin. Get out of my way! Anyone who gets in my way will die, Yishuin shouted. At that moment, his speed had already soared to the maximum, and he could not stop at all. He knew that if he were to stop, he would be surrounded by hundreds of Sage Realm ghosts and deities. Die! Suddenly, the 10,000 spell roulette appeared in Yishuin's hand. Thousands of waves of laws shot out, condensing into a terrifying energy tide, and blasted at the ghost at the pinnacle of the Sage Realm. Boom! The ghost at the pinnacle of the Sage Realm did not even have time to react. Its entire body exploded on the spot, torn to pieces by countless laws, and was swallowed by the 10,000 spell roulette. Yi Shiwen used the momentum to pass through the area. Roar! All intruders must die. Many other Sage Realm ghosts and deities seemed to have woken up from their deep slumber, and they all rushed at Yi Shiwen. Bang! 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 Yi Shiwen was like a ghost, wielding the 10,000 spell roulette and sweeping it around. All the ghosts and deities that came into contact with his 10,000 spell roulette exploded on the spot. They were no match for him at all. All of this took a long time to describe, but it actually happened in just 2 short breaths. Deadly bookworm! Hurry up! My wife and I can't hold on for much longer. Suddenly, high up in the sky, the water and fire jiaos roared. Facing the attacks of thousands of ghosts and deities, even with their strength, they would not be able to hold on for long. On the other side, the red-robed monster was in an even more miserable state. He kept retreating, and his body was covered in wounds. At that moment, he gritted his teeth and held on. If he could hold on, he might have a future. If he could not, he might never be able to break into the king-ranked realm. Just a little bit more. Yi Shiwen's roar rose into the sky. He had already rushed to the side of the 10,000 ghost heart-devouring grass. But at that moment, several powerful ghosts at the pinnacle of the Sage Realm had already pounced on him. Terrifying attacks swept down, completely shrouding Yi Shiwen. Break, all of you die? Yi Shiwen pulled out the Avicii sword from the Tianyuan mirror, and the sword aura of the Avicii sword turned into a terrifying sword aura. The blood-colored sword aura broke through their attacks completely, and at the same time, it cut those powerful ghosts at the pinnacle of the Sage Realm in half, killing them on the spot. That dreadful and tyrannical aura seemed to have transformed into a boundless hell in the void. Although Yi Shiwen had only used it for a moment, and then put away the Avicii sword, it seemed as if this powerful ghost king had been stimulated to wake up. His thick arm moved without any warning, and then directly swatted down towards Yi Shiwen. Hurry! 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 Yi Shiwen had no time to resist, and he did not even have time to see it clearly before he felt his body being slapped away. That terrifying power ran amok in his body, and his body almost exploded. Dense cracks appeared all over his body. I can't let it go to waste. Absolutely not. Phantom Sky Python, grab it. Yi Shiwen erupted without any warning. He forcibly withstood the huge force and didn't get sent flying. The illusory Sky Divine Python transformed into a huge hand and suddenly grabbed a bunch of 10,000 ghost heart-devouring grass in its hand. Then it kept howling. It turned out that the terrifying ghost power contained in the 10,000 ghost heart-devouring grass had begun to corrode the huge hand it had conjured. Fortunately, it was not a real thing, or his entire arm would have been crippled. Boom! Yi Shiwen finally could not withstand it and was finally sent flying, his body almost turning into a meteor. The fire and water dragons and the red-robed monster all roared in anger, bursting out with their fastest speed to escape. None of them dared to stop at all, because although they had been resisting with all their might, they had all seen that the Ghost King had suddenly moved. Otherwise, Yi Shiwen would not have been blasted away. Even Yi Shiwen could not withstand it at all, let alone them. They did not even dare to think about it. Roar! Just as they left the small island, countless terrifying roars rang out. Those ghosts and deities seemed to have discovered something as they howled in a frenzy. Soon after, an even more terrifying ghost howl rang out. That horrifying sound wave caused the entire world to tremble violently. The Ghost King has awakened, run! The red-robed monster did not care, madly burning his life force, and directly fled through the void to escape. Even if it would take a long time to recover, he could not care about that now. The fire and water dragons also formed the power of water and fire to escape, and the direction they fled was in the direction of Yi Shiwen. Now that Yi Shiwen had the 10,000 ghost heart-devouring grass, they had no choice but to escape with Yi Shiwen. Moreover, The scene of the 10,000 Ghost Parade behind them was too terrifying, and they really did not want to stay for a moment. The direction of their escape was in the direction from which they had come. Even Yi Shiwen was the same. Borrowing the huge force of the Ghost King's slap, he directly escaped, not daring to stay for even a moment. He spread his devil wings. His power had already climbed to the peak, not daring to stop even for a moment. But his face was incomparably excited. The 10,000 Ghost heart-devouring grass was finally in his hands. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.